this previously scheduled meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education. Adequate meeting of this board has been provided. Let's see. Roll call, please, Ms. Coleman.
Mrs. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Craig?
Here.
Mrs. Devine?
Here.
Mrs. Maya?
Here.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Here.
Mrs. Seltzer?
Here.
Mrs. Sherman?
Here.
Mrs. Z?
Here.
Mr. McMillan?
Here.
Mr. Dilkis?
Here.
Mr. Chu?
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There was an executive session tonight involving collective bargaining agreements and contracts being negotiated, and so we held this right before, so I'm asking for a motion to exit executive session. Is there a motion to exit executive session? So moved. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay. So, without further ado,
I will go get them.
yeah, we will have a presentation tonight, which is one of the most exciting presentations, which is a few musical selections from the SpongeBob Musical Youth Edition, led by Mr. Hartung, Mr. Gross, and Mrs. Goodall. So we'll welcome our students, and the board members will get out of the way.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Collingswood Board of Education meeting. If you don't know me, my name is Mr. Hartung, and I am the director of this year's middle school musical, which is the SpongeBob Musical Youth Edition. We are very happy to give you a little sneak peek of our show. Mr. Gross, they can come in now. They can come in now. Yep. Coming in, we have over 50 middle school students from both Collingswood Middle School and Woodland School. We are performing in just a short amount of time. Go all the way in the back. We have 4 performances coming up in about 2 weeks. December 11th, 12th, and 13th in the Collingswood Middle School Auditorium. Those are at 7 p.m. on the 11th, 12th, and 13th, as well as a matinee performance at 1 p.m. on that Saturday. We have 2 amazing casts. With us is our blue cast that will be performing on the Thursday night show as well as the Saturday matinee. Thank you to the Board of Education for giving us an opportunity to plug our show. Tickets are available right now at Coll's Theater, spelled E-R because we're in America, .com, COLLSTHEATER.com. Yes, he does have 4 legs. All right, so we have 2 selections for you tonight. The first will be a song called Bikini Bottom Day that introduces the entire Bikini Bottom undersea world. And then our SpongeBob, our Patrick, and our Sandy will be singing a song called Hero Is My Middle Name. SpongeBob is a very unique musical in that every song was written by a different artist. So Bikini Bottom Day was written by Jonathan Colton, who's written a lot of songs for musicals and movies, especially science fiction stuff, which is very cool. Hero Is My Middle Name is a Cyndi Lauper tune. But we've got songs in this show from Panic at the Disco, Lady A, John Legend, there's a whole, They Might Be Giants, there's a whole bunch of different musical artists represented. So I think we're ready. I just have one question for the cast. Are you ready, kids? Aye, Captain! All right, here we go.
Good morning, world, and all who inhabit it. Jump out of bed, mix up a breakfast for my favorite pet snail. Full steam ahead, the SSIM ready is about to set sail. this kind of day. Couldn't get much better, but it keeps on trying. I'm on my way. Somewhere there's a Krabby Patty that needs frying. And who's the lucky sponge in the mirror who is living his dream? Who's always extra careful with his dental hygiene? Gary, it's me. Happy just to be here in the world renowned. Bikini Bottom, how I love this town. Bikini Bottom when the sun shines down on a beautiful Bikini Bottom day. Good morning, Patrick.
Morning already.
Yup, and I'm singing opening number.
Ooh, I want a verse. I miss a snack. This busy schedule makes it hard to stay on track. Now I'll have to eat it while I'm watching TV. There might not be time for a nap, but I'll do what I can. They're showing all the episodes of Mermaid Man. Every single one. I'm spending all day on my favorite rock. Now it rhymes with rock. Rhymes with rock. Bikini Bottom Day.
No, Patrick, it's a beautiful day. And a lot of things rhyme with rock, clock, smock, pop, and lock.
Would you two please keep it down?
Good morning, Squidward.
Another day, another migraine. When I want some quiet, there's nowhere to go. A sensitive artiste can't get a moment of peace with these two idiots in stereo. They never go away. Typical Bikini Bottom day.
It's a great day, Squidward.
What did I do to deserve this?
We now follow SpongeBob past their treatom. How to send the chief the scars in this hot at work on her latest invasion.
Gee golly, that was close. It's just a little smoke, a minor setback. A few more hours most, and I'll be done with this here brand new jetpack. And then this Texas squirrel, this country girl, will spread her wings and fly. My bushy tail, a comet's trail, clear across the sky, above the town and looking down on a typical Bikini Bottom day. Yay! What in the chicken fry tarnation was that?
I didn't know, but I kind of liked it.
Excuse me, SpongeBob. I'm gonna power up the old seismograph.
Ooh, and I'm off to work too. At the greatest restaurant there is.
Ah yes, the Krusty Krab. Bikini Bottom most popular dining establishment. Home to the Krabby Patty owned and operated by Mr. Hinging Krabs. And across town, the least popular restaurant, the Chum Bucket, run by Sheldon G. Plankton with his computer wife Karen. To us, Nemesis located in a fast food called Roar.
Winds from the west. Everywhere you look, the skies are clear and sunny. Good weather's best when you're in the mood to make a ton of money.
Laugh all you can until the day you laugh no more forever.
Forever.
I've got a plan and I went to college so you know it's clever.
They say that money doesn't matter when you love your work. Ha! Who would say that? Probably some penniless jerk.
Soon the day will come when they all love charm. It's just a matter of time
Bikini Bottom,
till I get them in line.
Bikini Bottom,
And this town is all mine. Just a typical Bikini Bottom day.
SpongeBob reporting for duty at the greatest restaurant in the entire ocean.
soak it in me, darling well-daughter Pearl. Soon enough, this will all be yours. Just as soon as you graduate college, I'll start you as manager.
But Dad, I have my own dreams.
Like what? Listening to that boy band 14 hours a day?
Oh, they're called the Electric Skates.
Mr. Krabs, if she doesn't want to manager. I know someone who'd be great for the job.
You? You're just a simple sponge. A fry cook is all you'll ever be.
Why can't he see? I wore my good shoes and I've got my tie on. Maybe it's me. Am I just a simple sponge you can't rely on? Come on, Mr. Krabs, I could do it if you'd give me one chance. Then everyone would say good morning, Mr. SquarePants. I would never rest until I was the best.
Get in the kitchen. It's opening time.
I will always vow and pledge allegiance to this town that I hold dear. For all are welcome here, Bikini Bottom Blue. Yes, I'll stay true to the Bikini Bottom way. Bikini Bottom way. Bikini Bottom way. Bottom way. In the world renowned. Bikini Bottom, our own hometown. Bikini Bottom and the sun shines down. Shines down. Shines down. Shines down. Shines down. Shines down. It's a typical, incredible, regular, exceptional, and ordinary, extraordinary Bikini Bottom. World renowned, hey, Bikini Bottom Day.
Please don't leave, Sandy. We need you on the team. If the world is gonna end tomorrow, wallowing in sorrow isn't where I wanna be. 'Cause there isn't a catastrophe
Hello?
that could ever measure up to me. Sandy, just try it and see. Come on.
Try what?
Hero is my middle name. Fixing trouble is my game. Just give it, you don't know how. There's no better time than now. Don't give up and don't give in.
Think or swim.
The right answer is swim. Courage is your claim to fame. When hero is your middle name.
That's nice, boys, but mine's Jennifer, and no one believes my science is real.
Your machines, they made a real prediction. It's not science fiction.
But no one wants to listen at all. When everything's on the road so well.
But your friends need you to heed the call. Sandy, we need you. Patrick can help us climb the volcano, but you need to handle the whole stopping it from erupting part, which we have no clue how to do, and time is running out. But no pressure.
Boys, I'm still gonna push on from this town of yours, but we're not friends. So first, I say we give this idea a shot.
So
Fixing I'm up down. I'm saying you hear me roar. We'll be parents when no more. Courage is my claim to fame. When heroes my middle name.
about one more round of applause for our SpongeBob cast members? And that's December 11th, 12th, and 13th. Tickets available now at callstheater.com. Thank you to the Collingswood Board of Education, and enjoy the rest of your meeting.
All right, thank you again to Mr. Hartung, Mr. Gross, and Mrs. Goodall, and all the students for that excellent sneak peek at the SpongeBob Musical Youth Edition. Again, tickets are on sale at callstheater.com with an ER, so callstheater.com. All right then, moving on to Section 4, Committee of the Whole. We have several topics today. Can I get a motion to enter Committee of the Whole? And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, so we have 3 topics for Committee of the Whole today. The first, well, I guess kind of 4-ish. The first one will be tying together an update from our board roundtable last week, alongside also discussion about student enrollment. So I think maybe the first thing is I'm going to toss it to Dr. Seltzer to introduce the topic from our board roundtable from last week, and then I'll toss over to Ms. Jamuski to talk a little bit about the student enrollment topic.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all, and a great way to start our meeting with the performance. So last week on Thursday, we held our monthly board roundtable. For those of you who haven't been to one of these, we really encourage you to come out. But we try to sort of pair a timely topic with an opportunity to talk to board members in a less formal situation, much more conversational. We sit around in a circle in the library community room. And this month's topic, which tied very much to last month's board presentation, was about district testing and student performance across the district. We were very lucky to have Dr. Walker and Ms. Howell-Turner in attendance as well to talk to community members about their work and what they are doing around analyzing data, looking at trends in our district, and overall addressing academic quality across the district. So it was a great conversation, and I would love for Ms. Howell-Turner to maybe talk a little bit, and Ms. Walker, I know you're out in the audience, but you could chime in anytime as well, but maybe just given the full board, since only Roger and I were present at this particular one, give the full board and also the community a sense of the conversation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Seltzer, for the opening context. Dr. Walker, if you want to slide up, you are welcome to grab a mic. She has politely declined. So coming out of the October district testing report that was shared at the October board meeting, our October board roundtable focused on student achievement, testing and assessments. It was really an open conversation that we let the community members and the parents and guardians who are in attendance kind of drive the direction that the conversation went. And the first question of the night was really to zoom in and talk about the work we are doing. This came from a parent specifically asked us to talk about the work that we are doing to address the academic disparities that were evident in the October data presentation. And so that was really the opening question that extended through the next hour or so of the evening's conversation. We talked about the universal screeners that we are now using across K through 12 for reading and math in order to empower teachers and leaders with actionable, objective student data. And we talked about testing and assessments and data, both in the traditional sense of what you would think of like the actual tests that you get a grade on that go on your report card, but we also talked about all of the other really important pieces of data that we use to inform our work, particularly with regard to disparities in outcomes. And so we talked about class ranks, NHS inductions, attendance, lateness, suspension data, all of the different ways that we try to piece together a story of what's working for some kids in our schools and perhaps what's a barrier for other students in our schools. And so that was really the theme of the night, and we talked not only about the issue at hand, but also what we're attempting to do about it. And so I'm happy to pause there for any other folks to chime in or to ask questions, but it was, I think, a meaningful opportunity, and when these future ones come along, we look forward to the chance to talk with more parents and family members and community members.
Ms. Halpner, thank you for that introduction about that, the discussion that we had last Thursday. I think this ties in well with a question that Mr. Muskie brought up earlier today for committee of the whole, because it ties into, I think, trying to meet the needs of all the students, right, the data analysis piece. But I think we'll probably definitely have some follow-up questions in this discussion, but I want to toss it first to Mr. Muskie to introduce her topic, which is about the student enrollment.
Yeah, so I have concerns about secondary, especially enrollment numbers. I don't have my computer and unable to pull up the specifics with me. Sorry, I was expecting to have that. But we have definitely seen a decline this year in secondary, at least in the high school, of what I remember, the numbers from last month and this month, so September and October. It's concerning from many different perspectives. Not only just funding, but just we want to keep our students here. This is not only a personal issue for me and topic, as looking at high schools that I would like to send my children to, but also the community-wide, and knowing that not everybody has an opportunity to go anywhere else, and what are we doing to keep our students here? So I guess that's my biggest question because of enrollment numbers the last 2 months.
And to fill in, I think if I remember correctly, I think this month it was 700, for high school specifically, it was 700 students enrolled. I think last year it was around, it was over 700,
Roger.
I can't remember.
Roger, I actually have those
Okay,
numbers
yeah,
written
yeah.
down. Did I turn my microphone up or down? Hold on. Am I turning it? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I just wrote a few numbers down. So for the high school, September of 2024, the enrollment in the high school was 818 students. September 2025, the enrollment was 740, but then October, so 1 month later, down to 674. So I was wondering if there was any maybe explanation as to why it seemed like we lost so many students just in the first month of school. And again, I echo Maggie's comments and questions. Are we aware of what's going on? Has there been any outreach to families? Do we know why this is happening? And so on. Middle school numbers, definitely different. Okay, so September of 24, we had 456. October of 25, 471. So that's a 14 or 15 student increase. But the high school numbers were very drastic. Thank you.
And if I remember correctly, and again, I don't have the computer in front of me either, I do believe it was 700 for, and there's a few different ways in which, there are a few different numbers that are counted. I think when you include, it might be like when you include the students with special education needs, it hits the 700. But regardless, the point that I think is—
They were separate.
Oh, they were separate,
Yeah.
okay. That is being discussed is at the high school level at least, a decrease in student enrollment, and questions about why that might be and what we're doing about that. And I think that ties in to the more broader conversation, which is about how we're supporting our students, which is what the discussion during the roundtable was about. And so I think that's the first topic for conversation amongst board members. I would, I guess, posit to ask, first things first is, what have folks heard about the reasons why the enrollment may be changing? I know one of the reasons that I have heard has been around academics, so that's one of them, but I'll open up to the board and, let us have more of a discussion here.
So I think these conversations are something that I've been having more as I have a 7th grader now. And while his friends and their families are all trying to consider where they want to go for high school, and he's hearing those things and starting to think about it, it has been, it's been a more personal conversation, like Maggie said, but I would say that this has been an ongoing thing, I think, at the board level, and then in terms of feedback that we've been hearing for many years. And I think the reasons that we've been hearing maybe have shifted. And I think I can point to some decisions that we have made over the years to try to address those. I think back to several years ago when we had people coming up and telling us that it was too violent in the high school and that there were fights every day and that it was something where they didn't feel safe sending their kids. I think that we've seen a drastic culture shift at the high school. I think we have seen the reduction of cell phones has been huge in preventing people from wanting to do things that they could run out and then, broadcast widely. And I think just in terms of leadership in that building, the culture has felt very different. And I think that's something that we need to focus. I think it's focusing on those positives. I have heard from other parents, though, that the feeling is not great in terms of what the opportunities would be for their kids going into the secondary building as opposed to tech schools or private schools that are in the area. That we have to be realistic. We are competing with them. We've been competing with the private schools since I grew up in the area, and it is a reality. So I think part of it is the narrative and getting out pieces of what's happening in the building. I think this was about last year. I went to an Oakland school board meeting to sit in. They were honoring one of the board members, and the board vice president there talked about taking a walkthrough of the building and how impressed she was with what she saw. And what she came away from did not meet the narrative that she was being told by friends and others that were considering it. I know she has a middle schooler who's in my son's class now. I think it is opportunities like that to get people in. And I know we have talked about that with having high school students go down to the middle school to talk to them, or shadow programs or different things, like so they can see themselves in the building. And I think if they see themselves in these classes with these teachers, in these programs, I think those are all major positives. I think something like investing in the athletic space behind the high school is going to be critical for some of this. Not that I think it's going to be attracting Division I athletes, like I hope we get them, but also just the kids that are going to take advantage of that just want to be outside in a nice space that reflects the investment that they deserve. It is still something that is concerning, but I don't want to get into something where we point one finger at one issue or one group and say this is the reason why. I think there are a lot of factors that are going in there, and I think as a board it's important for us to discuss those, think of a lot of different ways to try to fix this and not just knee-jerk to one. And I don't know that I have one or have heard one, but I've heard a lot of different things that have come up.
So I think I heard the question and thought, well, what have we done to actually sell this product? Right, like at this board table, what have we done to celebrate the successes that I believe we are hearing? While there's room for improvement, I don't know that we leave or create an energy that suggests we see and acknowledge the work being done here. I'm gonna offer, maybe not enough. I also sat in a round table where somebody looked us in the face and said, well, why would somebody come here? And I was gobsmacked. And I just have to wonder, are we all doing the work to tell everybody the why? Right, and it does start with our conversations here and how we are deeply articulating our commitment to investing and to progress. I think the district, even from the one that I started sitting in this room about, are not the same one that we're seeing today, and I would like to celebrate much more loudly the accomplishments and the advancements that these students and staff have made, yet we are not always giving energy to that space. And so you're gonna pick up what we put down.
And so I'm really challenging us to ensure we're leading with yes and rather than like, well, why not this, why not that, why not that, right? Because I do think the tone and tenor of how we hear and celebrate the strides that we have made really does get amplified at home, because no parent knows. We don't know, right? We just aren't, we're only hearing what some of people tell us. So I don't think any of us know how people are making that choice, but I do think we have to be the best salespeople that we can be, because we're here because we're committed to this district. And I've been reflecting on that since our last meeting, because I'm going to demand excellence and also acknowledge the progress, right? And so I just would offer, we have room for improvement or opportunity to give ourselves and our district, our students, rounding applause when they really are truly deserving of it. So.
I was going to just go off of what Matt said about safety and of that being a concern a couple of years ago. I had lunch with Dr. McDowell years ago before I was ever in any of this kind of position, and sat candidly and told you that that was my concern at the time of safety in the high school, and you assured me that I should send my children here, and that is not that they are safe. And that progress that I've seen and I've witnessed and I've heard has been made. So I will acknowledge that piece. I'm one perspective, but I have a lot of people that I listen to and I talk to, and that has been one obstacle that I have heard we have made great strides in. So I will throw that out there and be appreciative of that piece from my perspective. But I think as some of us are, academic rigor and class offerings even more so are kind of what I've been hearing from community members.
First of all, I want to thank, speaking of student achievements, a huge shout out to the middle school students tonight that performed for us. They're simply amazing, and I love watching them every time. I don't know why it's making this noise. Am I near the mic? Okay, all right. In any event, I appreciate what everybody's saying. I have one logistical question. That number is fairly significant from September to October, and that's when they do the snapshot for the state funding. So how is that going to affect our state funding? I don't know which way is up and which way is down. There we go.
So
I'm trying to turn it down.
there's a couple of different numbers I think that's really important, and so I'll share the way in which projected enrollment has been for the last 3 years. And so in 23-24 it was 777, in 24-25 it was 790, and in 25-26 it was 750. And so projected enrollment is how we budget, how we plan, and how we program. To my knowledge, in the last 5 years we've never been over 800 students. And so I don't know how we got to the 818, but we can definitely take a look. And in what happened this particular year is that all school districts and all schools are required to more closely monitor attendance. And so what the attendance teams are doing at each and every school is they were looking at students who never attended, or students that they verified were attending other schools. And so what you saw from the beginning of the year until October count was a percentage of students that had either moved, transferred, or hadn't shown up in 6 weeks, and they were dropped from the roster.
That makes sense, because it was so significant. I'm like, there's got to be more to the story. Yeah.
We're also seeing a drop in, specifically in the number of students that are coming from Woodland. Two primary factors. Number one, CTE programming. There is a huge uptick in young people aggressively seeking career and technical education. And the second component is transportation.
Do we have, is that something that's being discussed behind closed doors in terms of transportation? It's never been something we've been able to solve, but if there's a willingness to solve it and a discussion that's happening, please let us know.
Our secondary MTSS team, they're working on something.
Since Woodland was invoked, I get a chance to speak. And Dr. Mattel, I've spoken with you about this previously, but this will take a couple of years to pay off, but the increase in outreach that I'm seeing from Collingswood High School to Woodland has been night and day improvement. And I personally reached out to Mr. Newman and thanked him for coming to our 8th grade commencement ceremony this year. I think that might be the first time that's happened in quite a while. And I constantly see that you're sending the Collingswood student leaders to Woodland for events and so forth. And I think, again, while it's not going to pay off in the short term, I think getting that kind of engagement and maintaining that kind of engagement going forward is going to ensure that more students from Woodland come to high school here.
If I could jump in. First, I think what you said was excellent. Like, we are servants of the machine that we're building here, and we should all be positive about it, iron out all the kinks, and do everything we can to uplift the school. In Oak Glen, we've started doing some like student achievement awards, just to like pull in a little bit more public and stuff. So maybe some of that could happen here. And I see we have 2 student representatives here. I don't know if they could give a little chime in on any of what you're.
Well, you don't have to if you don't want to, or but yeah, feel free if you want to chime in.
Is this good enough? So, what I did hear from Mr. Craig for the like some of the safety concerns, if phones have anything to do with that, and I would say as now we're in November, there's not too much difference from last year. There's still fights routinely. It happens at least once a week. There's a fight. I know last week there was one bad enough that Mr. Whalen got hit himself in the fight, breaking it up. And nobody has a phone in their hands. The only difference is there's no one there to record it. There's no one there to say it's going to happen, but in a high school, word spreads quick enough, it's going to happen. Enough people get there to the scene to go watch what happens. And in the mornings, nobody has a phone. Plenty of people have a vape. The bathrooms clouds are coming out. There's like in terms of safety and like. If that's a true concern for parents sending them here from a student who sees it every day, every week, there's still, that concern is very real. I wouldn't take away from that. Yeah, Kenny.
One thing I would just like to add is that I've talked to multiple of my friends and my peers, and they think that the disciplinary policy is also one thing that kind of has an effect on it, because with the fight last week, there were two individuals involved, and I believed it happened on either a Wednesday or a Tuesday, and that following Monday they were back in school like nothing ever happened. And one thing that I was questioning and that my friends were questioning is that really long enough to kind of have a lasting effect on these kids who are involved in these fights? Like, does 5 days really kind of give them the idea that, okay, what I did was bad and I shouldn't do it again? And that's just one thing that I've kind of heard from my peers as far as the disciplinary policy goes, is that are these kids having, like, is there enough time for them to really think about what they did? Because, you know, it happens a couple days before, and then that following Monday they're back in school like nothing ever happened.
So I will chime in here. Thank you very much for as student board reps for giving us the perspective from your seats. I think it can be very difficult to, I think, judge the disciplinary policy in terms of, is it enough? I want to give that, I guess, warning, because none of us are really privy to what all happens in the disciplinary process, right? And so there may be stuff that, and this is, I'm actually speaking to, I think we as a board have had to, or as a district have had to talk to parents who have demanded, hey, I want to know what happened to this other kid. Well, tough. You don't get to know, right? Because that is not your kid, and you don't have that right. And so my point being that I think understanding that there may be other things that are happening other than, say, someone not being in school or being in school, I think I would for all of us, consider that the disciplinary policy piece is a holistic concern. That's not just about suspension. And I know that that's been a very specific piece of the board's work in the last few years is the thought that how do we make a disciplinary policy that is not as exclusive, right? We're not keeping kids out of school, but still trying to address the root causes and assure that people assume responsibility for their actions and there's a more restorative piece of it. Again, I don't have, I'm not a student in the school, so I can't speak to your experiences there, but I think it's one thing where I think that's probably an ongoing feature that we have to work on, right? How do we continue to improve the restorative justice piece so that it does yield benefits and isn't just like a catchphrase, is my point.
And thank you guys for sharing that. And I don't want it to make it seem like I was thinking there was no more fights in the high school. I think if we had figured that out, we'd be writing books and going on tour and making lots of money. But I say that from more of from the narrative that I was hearing out in the community. And that I think I do hear more around rigor, opportunities, things that we could say like what are the opportunities that my child is going to have at Collingswood High School and a graduate college and high school versus if they go to one of the other neighboring schools. And or if you're thinking of moving in here, I mean, it was always I wanted to stay in through the elementaries and then maybe the middle, but then where were we going after that? And I know that's not a new issue, but I know it is not. That doesn't mean that we can't be constantly talking about ways to address that and try to really allow people to see their kids go to our school, thrive, be safe, and be challenged so that they leave here ready for whatever comes next.
I really appreciate also, thank you, student board reps, for bringing up those are, issues that every high school, I'm not to trivialize, but those are issues that lots of high schools are dealing with. I'm at Rancocas Valley, which has its share of fights and has gone viral for them. You can see me in one of them probably. But this larger issue about students feeling welcome, students feeling safe, I think is doing things like outreach to Woodland and to Oakland, bringing some of those students into the fold is a really important task. We've seen a lot of strides being made, particularly for some of our marginalized students and our disadvantaged students, but there's some things we need to consider. And along with academic rigor, students of color still underperform in this district, as they have for over a decade. When I was campaigning at Parkview years ago, we talked to a parent who lived at Parkview but sent his children to Camden City charter schools because he was a graduate of Camden High, and he specifically told us, I don't want my students to go through, or my children to go through what I went through as a student here. And so
Was
we
it
have
Collingswood High, right?
I'm sorry, Collingswood High, forgive me. Collingswood High, and he said, I don't want my children to go through what I went through as a student in Collingswood High. And I know that that was a long time ago, but history and bureaucracy takes a long time to change. I think that the strides that have been made by the inclusion of things like different Heritage Month celebrations and recognizing different students, but I think that we're still looking at Oakland, Collingswood, and Woodland as three separate entities, when perhaps some larger conversations need to be taking place about improving conditions, not just rigor for the most advanced students, but to ensure that those students are as successful across the board.
Do we have the data based on that? Because I think we're generalizing and assuming this is affecting all populations when I think we know or can deduce that it isn't. And so that feels like the elephant in the room, that we just need to be more specific, right? Like, let's not talk around, is the attrition every school, right, in every community? Or is it some? Because it's giving a lot of, right, that like right now, history is repeating itself. Let us all be really clear about today in moving through the world. And so we just need to acknowledge if our attrition is very specific, let's talk about it and decide to do better. but let us not generalize and assume this is a broad brush for everyone. Because those who have the choice, that's fantastic. But the ones who are left, that's who we're here for. And so I do want to make sure we're really specific around enrollment data and what we're comparing ourselves to, and who's leaving and who's staying, who's thriving, who needs support. We need to be specific.
And I will just tie this a little bit to the roundtable conversation that we started this with, because I do think the two are very, very, very tied. And something that Dr. Walker talked a lot about was sort of the extracurricular data, right, that was being looked at, right? Not just academics, not just test scores, but everything down to the granular student of the month data, right? National Honor Society data, who's in clubs, who's not in clubs, right? These really data points that speak to a broader sense of belonging and inclusion that makes a big difference in the culture of a building and whether or not kids want to both attend and also stay. And so I was really heartened to hear that Dr. Walker and the MTSS coaches are looking really, really granularly at some of that data, because I think it's, in terms of at least my experience on the board, not something that we have looked at that specifically. And I think it can tell us some really interesting stories about who is belonging and thriving at Collingswood High School and who needs to be brought in even more. And as has been said, those are the students I think that we should be paying particular attention to.
I think I'll chime in because I think I heard a couple things here, especially from Ms. Sherman and Ms. Devine, in the sense that I would say that there's maybe a couple different conversations here. One of the conversations that I think we hear a lot about is the conversation of families who are choosing to send their students to another school that's not Collingswood High School. And I think there's also another conversation to be had about how are we serving the students who are here within Collingswood High School. You know, on the one piece about the families who choose to send their students to other schools, one of the things that I've heard a lot about is, again, the academic offerings, the academic rigor, and making sure that we're providing that because we are competing with other schools in terms of that piece. You know, and I think one thing that has come up recently has been a lot about AP classes, right? Like, oh, we have AP class, you know, we aren't doing as well with AP classes, and kids are going elsewhere because of that. So speaking of the data, looking at the school report card that's published by New Jersey, and everyone can go look this up. So pre-pandemic, so 2018, 2019, about 31% of our students in high school were enrolled in one or more AP classes. So that's 240 total enrollments. I believe that 240 includes students who probably take more than one AP class, right? So it's, but that's 240, right? The year before it was like 231 students. The year before it was 183 students. So 2023, 2024, we had 336 students enrolled in AP courses. So almost 100 more students than before the pandemic enrolled in our AP courses. Looking at the list, you know, I'm just looking at 2018, 2019 compared to 2023, 2024, which is the latest report that's available. Looking at the list in 2018, 2019, there were 16 AP classes offered, whereas this in 2023, 2024, there are 15. Now, what are the differences? So in 2018-19, there was an offer of AP Music Theory, which had one student in it, which we don't offer anymore. There was also AP Latin, which had 6 students in it, which we don't offer anymore. But then we also do offer now AP Environmental Science, which is actually one of the most popular AP classes according to enrollment, which is 70. And so we're actually enrolling so many more kids in AP classes than we were pre-pandemic. And not only that, more of them are taking the AP test. So previous to the pandemic, only about 30% of students were taking the AP test. Now 35% are taking the AP test. And even more than that, not only are more students taking the AP test, more are passing with a score of 3. So prior to the pandemic, we're looking at 19.3% passing with a score of 3. 2023-2024, we're looking at 25.7% passing with a score of 3 or more. So this is where I'm thinking back to what Ms. Devine said earlier about this narrative. We have this narrative as if we are doing so much worse. And yet, if you looked at the numbers, that is, just by looking at AP classes, that's just not true. We have more students, significantly more students taking AP classes, and more doing better. And I would, personally, from my position, understanding, having been on the board for 5 years, understanding the conversation that happened maybe 2 or 3 years, I think by now 3 years ago, at the district administration at the board level about that Dr. McDowell brought up, which is, if you look at the pre-SAT scores that we get every year for all the students, the College Board, when they return their pre-SAT scores, also say, look, according to the pre-SAT scores, this student should be able to get a 3 or higher on an AP class. And so they give us who they think should be able to do well in an AP class in different subjects. And there was a concerted effort to say, hey, we have a difference, like the actual number of students who are taking AP courses versus what College Board says can take AP courses is very different. So let us try to enroll more. And I think that speaks also to the question of, well, what if we do want AP music theory, right? Even though it's one student. Well, increasing enrollment within AP courses helps to keep AP courses going, right? Because let's be honest, in this financial situation, running a class with a single student, I would not say is probably equitable. But if we want to be able to do these things, we need to be able to push our students who can take these courses to take the most advanced courses they can, so that we can have as many of these AP classes and continue expanding access as possible. So that's one piece about the AP classes, which I do have another bit around that, which is about the students who are staying. Does anyone have, I've sped out a lot of numbers there. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, so I have a lot of questions that are not AP related, though. We actually talk a lot about AP courses at this table. We had a wonderful presentation that kind of went over all of that. But that's just a small portion of our student population. And from where I'm sitting and my life experience, I think our AP offerings are really nice and great for our size of our district. But what about everybody else? What about our special ed? We still have 1 more month. We haven't had a special ed presentation at all this year. That's also data that goes right into academic rigor and class offerings. It's not just for the super AP elite student. Like, I'm talking about everybody here.
Yeah.
We really do concentrate a lot on AP offerings and discussions, at least at this table, but it needs to be a more broad conversation that doesn't actually touch on that student population, where it touches on everybody.
And something I'll add in there is when you're looking at the federal accountability testing, so percentage proficient ELA in math at the high school level. Again, 2023-2024 is the latest data available. Pre-pandemic, so I'm talking about 2018-2019, 52.2% of the high school was proficient in ELA. 23-24, we were at 60%. Pre-pandemic, so 2018-2019, 31 in math. 23-24, 27% in math. So I offer that to say that we're around where we were before the pandemic, and that piece about, and that's more general testing, right? And so I appreciate your bringing up, like, yeah, we shouldn't just be focusing on this singular group of students, but on the whole piece and on the specific subgroups. And I think to your point about, for example, if you have a special education need or so forth, right? That's where I think we turn to what are we doing for the students who are here? And one thing in mind I have here is just our 4-year graduation rates, right? So 23-24, we were 88.3% graduation rate for 4 years. But if you look at the different subgroups, it's different, right? Whether it might be by race or by economic status or by students with disabilities. And I think it's no surprise to anyone that our white student population has the highest graduation rate, right? While we look at our students with disabilities have one of the lowest percentages, which is that year was 80, right? Economic disadvantage was 82. White students were 93. Hispanic students that year were 86. Black students were 83. And 2 more races that year were 83. And this, I think, is a really important topic for us to talk about, because we also have to make sure that we are doing right by the students who are here. And I really appreciate Dr. Walker's discussion during the roundtable, because it was about, for example, looking closely at the data, attendance data, and saying, oh, this kid seems to have dropped out, yet they already passed their NJ GPA. So they're already like on track to graduation. They've done the hard stuff. What happened here, right? And being able to do that data analysis, not to just look at percentages, like we're saying here, but to look at the individual student to make sure that we can increase those pieces. And that's a lot of hard work, but I think that's the type of work that I'm really grateful that the district and the schools are doing, because I think that's how we move that needle.
And I remember, Maggie, this was a conversation we had during the retreat, right? And why we made one of the board goals about what does it look like to set up really rigorous pathways for students across the spectrum of student experience, right? And I do think our attention on it is part of why we made it a goal, right, for this year. And, I remember Ms. Hal Turner saying this, I don't know when it was, but, even though the high school seems so far away from those of us who have elementary schoolers, what we do in elementary school in terms of screening and catching kids and giving them what they need early pays dividends in middle school and high school, right? So we need to think of our district as an sort of ecology, right, of the same students, we hope, who come in as kindergartners and need different things. Once we catch them, we screen them, we understand them better. Hopefully that means that by the time they get to 9th grade, they're in a different place than they would have been, right, if we hadn't caught them early. And I do think some of what we heard at the roundtable that was so heartening to me was all of the new and different ways we are ensuring that we get to know individual kids on a much deeper level by making sure that administrators and teachers are building their data literacy, that we have really, really good tools in place, and that we're connecting those tools and the data they show us to what we're doing in the classroom every day, right? And I think this is the chipping away work that just eventually, right, pays off, right? Especially when the kids are teenagers, right, and are starting 9th grade.
I did have a few more things I was going to go off of, and after listening to everyone with everything they had to say, to have a little more refined of what I want to talk about. So at the end of the whole presentation in the last meeting, there was all the test scores across all the grades, all from elementary school to high school. And one thing that we all got notes on was elementary school and middle school are above state average, and then high school, it drops to below state average. And we tried in our form to ask students about if they can see any of that in their own day-to-day schedules of, like, some teachers, don't really focus on us. Some teachers, see if anything happens in the classroom that could relate to test scores. Didn't really work out. They didn't really say anything specific about that. But coming to this with, like, not just focusing on the AP students where AP classes have been dropped, they deal with that. But then to the whole school with CTE classes where students not going to college, they have no hopes of doing that, no want to do that, sometimes not the financial capabilities to do that. They want to go into the trades, do something else. Our school also tends to lack on that side as well, of those classes lose funding, those classes get cut. That's something else that with student retention enrollment stuff, when looking for this school, that it becomes no longer an option where do we cater to all students? I think we cater pretty well to the AP, the higher level, although I would say since I've been here in freshman year, we've lost AP Computer Science this year, which is one of, if not the most important things that most people will be going to in the future. It has one of the highest job outlook percentages of over 20% in the next 10 years. And we're cutting that, and that loses the AP side of students, and then not having the CTE might pertain to the to other students not at the top of their scores, not at the top of the tests, and that goes for both sides of the top and the less academically performing, but more in other areas that they perform. So it just, however, pertains to both sides.
And Mr. Szymanski, I really appreciate your bringing up that point about what are the pathways for students who aren't going to college, right? The CTE piece, and also, also bring up AP computer science. I myself being working in computer science, understand the desire for students to go into that field. I think what we as a board and as a community have to talk about is the fact that we cannot do everything. We cannot. We do not, fiscally it is impossible, right? So then I think that's part of the struggle for us, is to understand, what do we want our schools to be? Is it something where we commit to our high school turning into a CTE high school? Because that takes a lot of investment, right? Both in facilities and in attracting the appropriately certified industry experienced CTE teachers, right? And if we do, what is lost in that process, right? And that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we as a board and as a community, as school funding becomes such a universal issue for schools around New Jersey, and as we're contending with enrollment numbers and whether or not we're addressing student needs, is what do we want our school to be? I don't know that I have no personal hard stake right now. I don't know that I've heard from the community that we necessarily want our schools to be a CTE school. That's not to say that we shouldn't offer those pieces, but this is kind of the thing of why this discussion is so difficult, is because I think at this point we have to be thinking about how our district has to adapt to the future, right? And that necessarily involves change.
I appreciate the talk around different pathways and different educational experiences for students, but at the end of the day, I'd argue that outcomes are more important. And to pick up the threads of what Mrs. Devine and Ms. Sherman had mentioned earlier, there is a population of students here that, compared to the broader student body, is being underserved. And that is the elephant in the room again. So as much gratitude as I expressed earlier for the outreach, and I'll say it to Woodland, I don't think anybody sitting at this table can tell me with a straight face that a Woodland parent could walk in here, see the presentation that they saw last month, and said, my student's being served here. And until that is addressed, that goes back to Mrs. Sherman's comments about how there's Collingswood, Oakland, and Woodland, and they are 3 different communities, but we're sending them all to the same high school. That something has got to change fundamentally there to get us moving forward.
And in that same vein, if we really want to have some serious conversations about inclusive education, supporting special needs students, this is a small school. And there has to be a broader conversation about including other school boards and other personnel. Inclusion works when you have the bodies to do it. And this is a small district. We are underserving students of color, and we are underserving special needs students. Not by any fault of any teacher, but simply because of the fact that we are a deeply segregated school district, as are pretty much all of New Jersey school districts, by nature of our townships. And I think if we really want to have this conversation, we need to start thinking about some big changes, like our neighbors have already started to think about.
So I would like to, Maggie, thank you for bringing this forward, because I think we have to sit here and have these conversations. Frankly, AP has been top of mind because I think that's the class course selection I hear most about from those who come and do public comment. So it is top of my mind because I want to be deeply responsive to that cry, and have been deeply paranoid that my elementary kids need to be in those classes because that's where we're focused, right? So I do appreciate that. And I think we're asking for more data that doesn't protect us from what is, right? Like, we are the adults in the room, right? And we have to be comfortable with what is and decide what is the pathway forward, right? I think that, as Beth Ann and Fred know, I deeply chagrin the phrase thorough and efficient education. What does that mean? It makes my stomach hurt because that feels pejorative at best when you think about the potential of children. And so I do want to make sure that we think about that, because we cannot afford micro moments in a very small district. We can't, right? So I do think being prudent and intentional, and I appreciate the zoom into this AP, because I don't think we knew. Like, we didn't know. We didn't know how much we've done and the progress that has happened. We assume and we expect it, but we do need to talk about it more intentionally so we can better navigate our the next steps. So, you know, I think more is being required of all of us and asked.
The other aspects of this as well that I think we've talked about funding and what we can afford. I think some of the interventions that we've done over the last few years to address some of the student groups that we're discussing have been because there's been a focus at the national level to be addressing students in those gaps, and that does not exist anymore. The federal money that we've done the administration has done a lot of work to bring in grant dollars and try to maximize what we can offer. Those dollars are disappearing every day. We have to go into the future of the next few years as a district thinking, what can we do with less? And we're already asking so much of everybody in these buildings. But I think we can't, as a board, stray from keeping those as our North Star of how do we serve those students. But I think we do have to be realistic that some of the opportunities that or some of the strategies that we relied on in the past are not going to be options for us just because the funding will not be there.
And I'll say one more thing and then I'll stop, I promise. When I just want to clarify, when I talk about academic rigor and class offerings, I really do mean for every single student. So academic rigor for one student is, you know, a child in special ed, which I have some, you know, is going to look different than our AP. So it is rigor for that student in particular, for that group of students. So I just don't want it to come off as rigor of like just AP, you know, like it's for that student in particular, for that group of students. And I also will admittedly, you know, that I am very impatient. So Kate, when you talk about chipping away, and we talked about this at the retreat, I acknowledge that, you know, like that it's hard to see such small movements, but it is really nice to hear that the granular data points are there and they're serving our youngest students to then serve our, you know, as they go through our district, so.
I also just want to add, for those of you that have not participated in this, I do recommend a tour of the high school. It was really phenomenal this year when we went, so.
I agree that all students absolutely need to be supported, and for student populations who are not being supported, we do need to ask the questions of how we're going to have that, how we're going to make that happen, and how that's going to be accomplished. Absolutely. And yes, we want to focus on the students who are here. Absolutely. But I also think it's imperative to figure out, you know, and we've heard from our student representatives, and that's some great insight. We've talked to other parents in the community, that is some great insight. But we do need to figure out how to keep people here. And you're right, it's not just about AP, but I would argue that if we can't figure out why we're losing so many families, and you know, again, I'll look at those numbers. You know, I saw the 818. If that was not correct, that's fine. But we're talking triple-digit loss within a year of students, and those are families that are going to donate money to programs. Those are families that are going to volunteer to keep our extracurricular activities thriving. And I would argue, if we can, you know, we've heard concerns from staff members about things as well. So if we don't figure this out, all students are going to suffer, and those are the students who, you know, the families who are choosing to go somewhere else, but if we can't figure out how to hold on to those families, then the students who are here are also going to suffer, because that will affect our state funding. I know the national level it's so up in the air, we're not sure what's going on. But again, now we're talking consolidation of the secondary campus due to declining enrollment numbers. And we don't know how that's going to impact staffing, program offerings even more. So, those are some other conversations we have to have as well. So I do agree that celebrating the schools, there's obviously great things happening. My son's a sophomore, he loves it. He loves it here. So, there's definitely great things happening in the schools that we can pay more attention to, but we have to figure out how to get the message out there that to hold on to families that are considering going elsewhere, because all of the students that we're concerned about who aren't being served, they're not going to be served any better if we continue to lose numbers. So I think that is something that we need to hyper-focus on.
So I just wanted to make one comment that I do think, and I'm going to point to Kate's reference of our board goals, right? One of them is to get data on the culture and climate. And I think we are asking the question, right? Because we don't want to sit here and assume and guess and have one conversation and make it the many. So I do think we are making strides to be informed stewards in this space, and so I'm really excited to get better clarity around what's the there, because we're all making to some extent an assumption about it, unless it's your own lived experience. So I do think that data will certainly help us, because I agree, it's not one or, and we need to figure out how to finesse this and there's data we definitely know that's showing us that we need to start to think about this a little differently.
Can I add one thing?
Oh, yeah,
before
please.
you move? I don't talk much, but I will say, I do have lived experience. I do have 10 kids who have come through the school for the past 27 years, maybe more, I don't know, I lost count. And kids that are still here currently, I had 3 of them that have come into, when they were coming out of 8th grade into 9th grade, we let them have that decision. Do you want to go to Collingswood High School? I've been here since 1997. Do you want to go to Collingswood High School? Do you feel safe? Do you want to go off with your friends? Do you want to, do you want to move on with your friends and go to the school? And my twins and my granddaughter, who were coming in 9th graders, decided they did not want to come here. And we give them that room. We give them that space to make these options, give them options, make that decision. And my granddaughter decided to go where her mom lived in Cherry Hill, and my twins went to PVI. Can we afford that? Absolutely not. Did we pick up 3, 4, 5 jobs? Yes, we did, because they made that decision and they wanted to try a different school. And the main thing was safety. The main thing was because they were afraid. They're sophomores now, but they were afraid to come into the high school because of all the stories, because of the fights. And last year, halfway through, my granddaughter decided to leave Cherry Hill at Christmas and she wanted to come back to Collingswood. And my daughter said she wanted to come back to Collingswood also, but she wanted to finish out PVI, complete what she started. And I gave them space, but when everybody says, you talk about the elephant in the room also, my kids are all biracial, 6 Native American and my other 4 are half Puerto Rican and black. And we've had many things happen in this town. Students not want to sit next to my daughter because they say her skin is dirty because it's brown. I'm a white woman and I try to explain to my kids the best I can about privilege in this town, in many towns in the world, and what's happening. Again, we give them the options to make the decisions on their own, but knowing that we're giving them a foundation, to make these good decisions. And this year, my twins, one decided to stay at PVI for athletics and education, and my daughter, she desperately wanted to come back to Collingswood. And she's here, and she does love it. Does she say there are fights? She does. She does say there are fights. But I ask her, do you feel safe? And she does say she feels safe now. As much fear as they had coming in 9th grade, and now she's a 10th grader, she feels comfortable, she knows there's fights, and I will pull her out fast if she says there's, nope, Mom, I want to go back. I'm like, okay, let's go. But it's also the teachers were leaving, the classes were being dropped, all these things were in consideration, but the number one thing was safety, and it was for me too. And when we talk about that elephant in the room with having our town and cultural and diversity and DEI being dropped, it's not just this. So when we go off to work, that is our family, right? Our job is our second family. When the kids come here, this is their second family. They want to feel safe, they want to get a good education, and they want to feel like they are part of a big community. So it's not just here, it's our entire community. The elephant in the room is the entire community and how we're divided. And that's what needs to be addressed, not just in our school. This is where we are now, this is the table we're at now. But how can we all come together as a community instead of against each other or having such, we can have different perspectives, but what happens in our community affects our children because they're listening and they're sponges. Do we want this to pass on generations? No, we don't. So how can we address that? Because we have these roles here.
Daniel, I think I've encouraged you before to, I love to hear when you talk in the board meeting, so please talk more. Thank you for sharing your experience and your family's experience. I think that actually really segues really well to our next discussion item, but also I think it talks about the narrative piece, which I think has been brought up, right, is that there has been, I think it's incumbent on us, I think Ms. Devine said it, to be the salespeople for this district, right, to counteract the narrative that that this district is a dumpster fire, right, it's beyond a dumpster fire, and actually that we are doing great things here. And that understanding that we are fighting against that narrative, selling the district, I think is really important because we want people to choose, right? And I don't know that any of us here should sit in judgment of anyone who chooses to send their students or to go somewhere else, right? That is a very personal choice, and I think folks should, none of us here, I think, should be sitting in judgment of that, right? But our hope is that we can encourage people to choose here with that narrative piece. I think you also, Ms. Brown, bring up a very important point, which is that this is maybe more of community-wide discussion. And so Ms. Devine and I spoke earlier, and so this is the next discussion item today.
Danielle, you read my mind today. So I want to talk about a topic that's come to this board, all of our attention, board members, around kind of sharing of the community has voiced their concern around what they have seen depicted by members of our community and members of this board. And so I sit here in a space of, it's sitting in a space that feels deeply divided. Like there's a fissure that is, I do not believe our intention, right? I know the individuals in these conversations, and I sit in a space of, I don't see us not all standing for dignity and respect for everyone. And so, I want to make sure we have a clear conversation about our values and how do we show them and how do we ensure we're doubling down on showing them. Because one moment in time does not become my measure for an individual. And I just deeply believe that, right? I walk through this world hoping people don't judge me and not know me. So I must move through the world doing the same for everyone else. So I want us all to just hear me ask that we show up for each other, and the willingness to lean in to what makes us uncomfortable, which may have opened something you had no intention, but here we are. So what are we gonna do about it, right? Are we gonna start to figure out, right, because I learned stuff, I didn't know anything either, right? But now what? Because we do have big stuff to deal with. We have community members, right? I sat this week, just so you can appreciate, getting a text being told there may be ice here. And that, for your community, is deeply concerning. And so I trust and believe that everyone at this table and who knows me knows I am in the core of my heart believe that you will stand up and protect my family and everybody else's, but I need us to acknowledge that we need to do the work. The adults need to do the work to help the children do the work, right? We gotta just show up and lead by example. So I think everybody on this board, at this board table, understands what I'm referencing, and I'm asking that we lead with positive intent and do better, right? Like, what are we gonna do, right? Do we have conversations? Do we start to use our roundtables to like make sure this is what this looks like for us, and this is what we're gonna keep bringing forward? Because I'm not here to sit in a town that is too small to be so divided, to be really frank with everyone. It is too small to have this energy. And to be honest, the days are already hard. I don't need this stuff too, right? And so, like, I need us to double down very intentionally. I am personally asking you to make sure you're showing up in the way you want anyone to show up for your kid, and I'm hoping that your kids would show up for my kid. My last comment is I was walking here this evening, and it was so interesting when I see folks really move around me almost scared. Still, it's 2025. And so that's my lived experience. Today, that happened, tonight. And so I think I sit at this table to make sure you appreciate that that's people's experience. Mine today, a child of someone I know, crossed the street around me. Because I'm not sure if I look safe enough at dusk or dawn. So like, I need us to really appreciate the language we're using, the assumptions we are making, deeply hit to the core of people. So I want us to have, we don't need to have a deep conversation, but I need to say out loud, like it has been circling in our inboxes, and recognize that we need to do something together and to do better.
Ms. Devine, thank you for sharing. You know, I think the way that I want to frame this part of the discussion was around our core values. You know, and to be a little bit more explicit, I think many folks in the community know that the board has received some emails pertaining to hand signals or signs that were in a picture with board members in it. And there are questions to us about, you know, how do we assure the community that as a board we are focused on the needs of all of our community members. One of the responses that I had back to community members who asked was about our core values, and thinking about what Ms. Devine shared, right, about the fact that, you know, race and the effects of race are not something of a bygone era. It's something that we have to address and think about as a school district, especially as a school district has very disparate outcomes for different racial groups of students. And so, you know, our core values that we passed in February last year, well, I guess last school year, but this year still, is as a Board of Education, we believe that the continued education of students, staff, and community to support inclusive excellence and social justice is an essential investment. Equity and inclusion are fundamental elements of all decision-making and curriculum development. Learning opportunities should incorporate and mirror the diversity of the 21st century so that our students are prepared to participate in a global economy. The Collingswood Board of Education is dedicated to supporting practices that promote dignity and respect for all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, differing ability, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, family configuration, social and economic status, or immigration status. And what Ms. Devine challenged me to earlier today was a discussion of what does that mean? What does that look like for us to do these things rather than just to pass these things? And I think that's a fair question to ask. I don't have all the answers there, but I wonder if board members want to chime in and at least have some of that discussion right now, because I think this is a question for that our community is interested in.
So I'm going to take the lead. This impacts me, obviously. I will take the, it is something that was presented at a party that we had when we won re-election, and I'll just announce that it was with Megan and Danielle and Maggie and Stacy and I were all there. I do want to acknowledge that there is a community member that was involved in that picture that I need to be very careful about, because that is a very serious accusation against that person without knowing if there was any actual intent behind that from them. I can speak to that and say that there was no actual intent behind that, but I need to be careful protecting that person as well. And I also want to say that I really do, I was not in charge of, like, the campaign page. It was not on something that I could log in and adjust or whatever, so I have to say that Stacy did bring it to our attention that someone had messaged us, and I do very much appreciate that that happened, because we wouldn't want to offend anybody. So the picture was removed immediately. We responded to that person and said the picture was taken down. Just at the possibility that there could be somebody that took offense to it, whether there was any intention there or not. However, I did later on in the week have a conversation with Zakiya, and we had talked about getting together as a community to educate people on certain things that they may not even know about. You know, for example, a lot of people at the party had no idea that anything meant anything. In terms of one specific hand gesture. I think the other one was just something that we had missed, just putting up the picture, which was definitely, on us. But anything that was harmful to somebody else, we would not ever want that to happen. So I just wanted to put that out there publicly. And I also think that it's a great idea if we come at this as a board and we talk about, what's offensive to some people, and or what could be offensive to people, and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, because again, we're all here to do the work, and we all care very much about the kids and the community. It hurt to feel so divided, over the course of the last couple of weeks, especially coming off the high of a nice celebration. But, we take responsibility for that, and we don't want to offend anybody by all means. So I appreciate the notice that it was there, and somebody took notice of it and sent it to us and said, hey, this is offensive. We took it right down. So I just want everybody to be aware of that. But also, I do want to have these conversations, and I think we need to do the work. So I'm in favor of that. Thank you.
I'll just chime in and say that I don't think that we as a board should be chatting about, like, any individual person, right? I think, and so just kind of echoing you, Ms. Meyer, I think we should be discussing our board piece here. And something I kind of want to echo, though, is I think it's a really tough situation in terms of, like, intent versus impact, and this is just kind of writ large for all of us as board members when we think about the actions that we take and the decisions that we make. One thing I heard from Ms. Devine's story about today, her experience today, walking to the school board, is something that I've experienced too, not in that exact sense, but in the sense of, did that just happen because of my race or not? I don't quite know. And that is, I think, one of the pieces of psychological safety when we talk about how our students feel safe and how people of color feel safe, is the fact that oftentimes racism is either unintended, or it's really hard for anyone to call out, because I might think that interaction or something that just happened rings all alarm bells in my head, that it was because of my race. But if I say anything about it, it's going to be because I'm crazy. And I think that is a challenge for us. Like, we have to do the work as people in power when we're making decisions about how do we address the academic outcomes of all our students, because I don't think anyone wants to be that parent of color who has to come to this district and, have people call them crazy because they're yelling at us about, why is my student not being served, right? And I think that is, a really important piece to make note of, that it's not, we have to be really careful with what we're doing, because it's not just about intent, and not all of us, it's not for us to be perfect, right? But to understand that these are the minute kind of details that I think really contribute to psychological safety in this community.
So I'm going to just make one comment and offer why I brought this up. It's because it's a conversation with, not at. And so that's different, right? And I can't tell if we're talking at each other or with each other. And so how do we shift, right? Because we're only as good as everybody leaning in. And so I certainly think we have to figure out, because even in the conversations we've had, they have big, hairy things that are out there that we need to, like, try to wrap our arms around. And how do we get more comfortable having those conversations together rather than at? is something I think we should think about. And recognizing that we all just want to do better the next day. Like, you learn something and you move on. And so I would posit that our goal is to get better. And that we need to just have space to be able to do that in dialogue rather than in silence and hope it works, right? Like, because that's not the outcome or the goal. Bless you.
I will make a quick comment because I was also in that picture. I did respond to community members because honestly, there was no intent. There was an uneducated assumption by myself of what things meant, what didn't mean. Like, I don't know, and I honestly am taking this as a really big learning curve for myself to learn and to be better, and to promise that, as I always have, that I will walk the walk, and I will learn from the experience and be better for not only myself, but the students and my community, of which I care deeply about. So.
I want to thank everybody for the stories and experiences that you share with us, and the ability for us to learn from them. I think, Zakiya, to one of the points that you made about being so divided in such a small place is something that I think with board elections over the last several years, I have seen and felt uniquely. Like, it hasn't been about ideas solely just of what's going to be best for kids. It has become tribalism in a way, and I don't think that ultimately serves our community. I think we laugh about this a good bit, but after Sarah, Roger, and I ran, we were told by several community members that we needed to do something around healing the community. So we convened a space at the community center, and we invited a lot of people, and we made ourselves available to listen and to have those conversations, and nobody showed up. The knitters that were there came over and talked to us a little bit because they were using the community space. So not that I read that to think that we had solved the problem, but I wondered how much of this was elevated because of all the vitriol that was going back and forth in the elections. And that's not to excuse anything, but I think it is part of a conversation too, as we continue to attract people to serve their community in this position. It is not easy. It is a lot of work, and you do weigh when things do not go well. I'll speak for myself. The weight of that sits on your shoulders because of the real impact that that has on kids. And I think that there is a lot that we can do as a board to help, again, relieve some of those tensions and to build some of that community and bring people together to have that. But it is something that is larger as well that's been happening, I think, over the last several years, where if you don't agree with my vision for what needs to happen here, we are enemies. And I don't think that that is the reality, or should be the reality.
Okay, so it doesn't seem like any other board members are jumping in here.
I just want to say, I want to thank you guys for the conversation and bringing it to the table. I think it's important.
And to that point, I think it's a conversation that likely I would argue likely should never end, right? And I think it's incumbent on us to find more opportunities for us to understand how do we actually live up to our core values here. And I would encourage us to continue having this conversation purposefully, right? And not just waiting for external reasons to bring it up, for internal reasons for us to bring it up. The last piece of committee of the whole is actually very much in line with this whole committee of the whole, which is we do need to discuss a proposed policy change that's up for first reading today. I laugh because the proposal for up for first reading in policy is that we actually get rid of our current standing committee structure, and we change to operating as a full board with working sessions, so essentially committee of the whole, rather than working within kind of siloed committees. And because I'm the one proposing this change, I'll explain myself about why I wanted to bring this proposal up, and then this, open up for discussion for the committee. Essentially, how we've been operating has been that we have committees of less than quorum, so 5 members who talk about curriculum, finance, buildings, grounds, policy, personnel, and so forth. And then the committee chairs report out to the full board, and then we come in and we vote on stuff. And I think there have been a lot of, concerns, and I think many of them very valid about that structure. Understand that boards don't actually have to operate in a committee structure. Boards can also operate in what's called kind of a committee of the whole structure, where essentially instead of having private committee meetings, right? The reason why committees have to be 5 is so that it's below voting quorum, so they can't take any action. But instead of having private committee meetings, we would have one big working session meeting where all board members could be involved in conversations about all topics. And thinking about the last several years, and I would say that, and I would thank actually Dr. Seltzer here for a lot of help here. I would say that our communication as a district has about topics that are really relevant to the community has improved a lot over the last couple of years. And I thank Dr. Seltzer and also Dr. McDowell for his work there. Even with all that, I think there are concerns, and I understand why, because of big changes to the district about transparency of what's happening within the district. And so talking to other folks who have worked in or run these working session type of deals where there's no committees, but everyone comes together and works, they have said that the payoff for that is a lot more trust amongst the members of the body, and also a lot more trust with the community, because necessarily in that structure, we would have to have that working session in public, because we're coming together as more than 5. So the proposal essentially is saying we will get rid of committees, we will all as a full board consider all matters, and likely the way in which logistically this would work would be the week before our board meeting. So if this is our board meeting, the week before, we would have a working session, which is another board meeting. It'd be public, but it would all be about discussion of all of the agenda items as if we were in committees. Of course, we'd have to have executive session, talk about specific personnel issues and some other specific confidential issues, right? But everything else would be basically the community can watch the entire board discuss all of the issues that are in front of the board. And then the following week, we would come together at our regularly scheduled board meeting, which would include presentations and that wonderful presentation from the students, for example. And then we would essentially then take action and actually pass the items after the discussion. And my hope there in proposing this is understanding that we are going to, as a district, be encountering a very challenging, I think, year and years coming up because of what we're going to be seeing universally across New Jersey with school funding deficits. And understanding that that will necessitate big change, and understanding that there has been a continued, I think, undercurrent and complaint about transparency, that this might be a way for us to, 1, involve our board members, and then 2, also address that trust and transparency issue. And so that is why I'm bringing up that proposal. And so now I'll shut up and let everyone else.
I'm the chair of the policy committee, so I'm just going to tap on that. I do think that this is a genuinely decent idea that I think we can all have a conversation about. However, I do feel like this does not need to be a conversation this does not need to be something that we need to implement right now, because we do have a new board member being sworn in on this board, and then we also have Oakland and Woodland, who we all reorganize in January, and we all pick a president and vice president. No one knows who those are going to take on those roles, and I don't think it's fair for us to make that decision for a brand new board coming in January. I think that's something that we need to discuss at the retreat to see if it works for everybody that's then going to be here. We don't know For example, if Chris and Jimmy are going to be here, if they're going to be the reps, or what's going to happen in the Woodland and Oakland sector, and including us. So I think it's only fair if we table this discussion. I think it's fair to have the discussion now in committee of the whole, but I think we should table the vote and put it at the retreat in January so that we have all existing parties that are going to be impacted by this being able to weigh into the discussion.
I agree that I think that this has a lot of positive to it, and it would allow for the transparency piece, the communication piece. But I also agree that kind of pushing this through, not pushing it through, but it does feel a little rushed. I think it's a great idea, and it's a great retreat topic because in addition to everything that Kelly mentioned, there's a lot of logistical questions, right? I know that there was a discussion of we're not even sure, exactly what kind of topics could we not have in that kind of a forum. What kind of a time commitment are we looking at? What kind of dates are we looking at? There's a lot of logistical stuff that I think needs to be ironed out, and maybe to have our solicitor involved as well. So I agree that I think a larger discussion, the retreat would be a perfect opportunity for that, would be in order.
So, one of the reasons why we would be bringing it up tonight is because it has to go through first reading, and then it has to go back to committees again, or to the board again for a second reading. So again, this wouldn't be something that if we voted on a first reading tonight would stop us from discussing again. But if we do wait until January after the retreat, we're looking at if this is something that we decide we want to do, probably not March or April before we were having these, which is right around budget time, and then we're looking to make a switch. I think these are valid concerns, but I think logistical concerns are things that we can work around. I also think it's important for reps coming from the other towns to understand what they're getting into. And if this is something that is on the table, I think we should decide now whether we want the future of the district to be operated in this way. There are a couple things that came up tonight. I think this was an offhand comment of just like when we were talking about transportation for Woodland, about conversations behind closed doors. And I think that's something that we hear a lot of things that are happening behind closed doors. This is one door that we can open to actually say, hey, here's the work that's happening, here are the conversations and the things that we are juggling. Here are the things that are not coming to board meetings. I've had parents ask me in the past, do you just approve everything? And no, when we talk in committees, we decide what are we going to bring to the board, knowing that we think it's going to be able to pass. And I also think the speed in which getting things done, I think when we come together and are able to work, I think the committee structures in many ways that I've seen, and we've done a lot to try to improve on how we share information since when I started, I think it does slow us down. Not being able to all be in the room and around the table to talk about these things and get a sense and get all of the feedback. Because if you're not in personnel or not in curriculum, you're not getting to be part of those conversations. You are getting a readout of what it was like for the people who were there, but you're not then able to engage and ask the things in the moment. This board is probably much more of a commitment than some of the, when I talk to some people who served on these boards in the past, they like to come and talk to me because a lot of them still watch. The amount of work that I think and the amount of meetings that we do, particularly over the last few years, has been a lot. So I don't say this saying that I'm ready, like jumping at being here again for another full board evening. But I think to bring the level of transparency, particularly around some of the tough decisions that are going to happen, I think it's going to be worthwhile, and I think it's something that our community has asked for. I mean, in many ways are demanding. So I think this is one very real way that we as a board can become more transparent to the community about the conversations that we're having that impact their kids, their taxes, the future of this town.
I'm just concerned that this conversation has not come up in the past at all. So I just think that if we're this close to having, a new reorganization and a new structure, that we should really wait and have that respect for the people that are coming on board and let them be part of the conversation. But I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I think that it has its, its pros and cons, and we talked about that. And Beth Ann, you had mentioned a couple of different things too that were really excellent points. These are all good conversations for us to be having. I just think that we need to be fair to, our own structure and our own reorganization, and think about us coming in as new board members, to think about us reorganizing and how that's going to go, and just have respect for the people that are coming in, that they need to be part of that conversation as well, as compared to us making this decision so late in the year in terms of like November and then December. So yes, it will be up for a second read, but it will be implemented by January, and then we don't know what's going to happen after that. That's my point.
I just want to piggyback on that a little bit. Not to influence anybody's discussion, but just so you know, like the process. We're reorging on January 5th. At that meeting is also where we set our entire year's worth of school board meetings. So, if not then, when? Only because we publish, I'll send it to all the local papers, the state websites, all the mandatory, but I publish for the entire year. So, just kind of throw that out there, because that is when we are required to set our calendar, and it is at the reorg meeting is when we establish when we're going to meet and how we're going to meet, and then that is published out to the community. So I just kind of I've never, that's just when it's done. That's all.
I would also argue that the retreat, which usually occurs, once the board is reorganized and it's all, everyone who's going to be on the board is there, that seems like a perfect opportunity to talk about what does this kind of a policy look like in implementation, right? You have everyone's voice who is going to be on the board, be a part of that conversation in a way that they would not be necessarily if you waited. So I think it is a natural place to start a new way of doing things is right when you reorganize a board, and you have the added benefit of being able to have a retreat to really talk through what that looks like.
I spent a lot of time this week researching this after I saw that it was up, and spending a lot of time talking to other colleagues who are on boards of education who teach at my school. I also spent a lot of time talking to my district's superintendent, who in 2015 moved from committees to working sessions. And the reason he did so was because of the lack of transparency, which a number of people on this board have complained about, and because it was a very divided board. And we just got off of a conversation talking about how divisive some of our conversations can be. And in doing so, he moved to a schedule in which a board would work through the agenda and then would move to action items, which they would take into account following their actual public board meetings. Their working sessions were public. Board members were invited, members of the public were also invited to attend. They had a public comment section. He said that, quote, "My main goal with the work session was to literally review each agenda item to answer any question and concerns, making it very clear that this is the time to talk and ask questions, so that the action meeting is specifically for moving on and voting. And our public meeting is not full of questions in front of the public, students, and staff. In a sense, we prevent a more unified front, which is key for being productive and keeping student success in our foresight. It's easy to get bogged down in committee and other directions when separated." He still uses ad hoc committees for certain things like negotiations or personnel issues. And so this idea about like, oh, what can we present, what can we not present? This is something that a number of districts have done before. The dates are all going to be planned out at the beginning of the year, correct? Right? They're all mapped out, so logistically that would be solved, right? In addition, I talked to members of the Board of Education who work for Mount Holly, for Lenape Regional. These are Burlington County districts. Mount Holly is very small. Lenape Regional is very large. And these are both districts that use working sessions within their board meeting structure. And the number one thing that they said is the transparency is worth it, because more of the board's discussion, questioning, and thought process becomes visible to the community. It also aids in reducing the perception that real decisions happen in committee behind closed doors. Real decisions happen here in real time. I find it surprising that a number of members of this board say that we should wait until new board members are on, because those same board members also ran on transparency, accountability, and collaboration. So I don't understand why this is anything but transparent when all of our decisions, all of our questions would be in real time. A number of campaign materials from members who were just reelected and elected said, quote, on a September 9th Facebook post, "It's important to have all board members involved in all conversations and decisions." An October 22nd post Collingswood has become a community divided, and that rebuilding trust requires more than just revisiting the same old ideas. So let's not revisit the same old ideas. If committee meetings are not bringing everyone into the same room, then we should change those same old ideas and do something different. Finally, a colleague who serves on the Lenape Regional Board of Education noted how working sessions were especially important in facing complex issues and problems, including issues of segregation, issues of inclusion, issues of financial and budgetary problems that cut across multiple domains. You can't just say that finance and buildings and grounds and all the decisions are made there will not leak over into curriculum and personnel and policy. In light of another potentially and likely tumultuous budget season this spring, and all the demands for fiscal responsibility that a number of members of this board have constantly called for, this is the best place to dig in and ask difficult questions. That was the phrase that my colleague from Lenape Regional said. You want to dig in, you want to go line by line through a budget, do it in a working session. Everyone can hear the accurate, unfiltered, full information in real time instead of a game of telephone. That means Dr. McDowell would not have to make 4 separate presentations where he left something out and then is accused of, misinforming the public. This would all be better use of our administration's time. Our superintendent and board secretary don't have to turn around and make the same presentation 3 more times. And so I don't understand why there would be any problem with transparency or, bringing in these new board members should be able to decide when they've been calling for transparency since August.
If I can jump in too, thank you for all that research, but also not only do they have to repeat themselves a couple times in this, but they also run another board, right, for Oak Glen. So I think putting this off is kicking the can down the road. If I am elected for the seat next year, I'm willing to do it. If somebody else is elected for it, then the stone's been put in place. To, I guess, Matt's discussion, we're going to go into April and have budget discussions and then switch the committees at that time. It's going to create complete chaos across the board. So I think doing it in January, right on the re-elect session, and because everyone gets training, right? So that you get training straight up from the very beginning on how to run committee of the whole and how to do working sessions. So I'm for it.
I almost 1 year. Oof. And I would offer that committees are too opaque. We sit at this table wondering what we mean. Let's all be honest. And so let's just have the conversation, guys. I will offer this may be a marathon, but probably one of the most productive conversations we've had, right? Because we've decided to say the thing out loud. And so a lot of people who will come to this mic potentially tonight, but who have regaled us with their feedback are tired of not understanding how we got to the decision. And I don't know how to let them in if it is not for this format. I don't understand any other configuration of it. And sitting in this space, new to this side of the world, the committees, I am still trying to piece together why they're so separate, because they deeply need to talk to each other and understand what happened and how did we get there. I can appreciate new members are going to come, and I'm hopeful that actually the structure will make it easier for them to understand what's going on, right? Like, it's not so difficult to piece together, well, personnel, you only get because of this kind of conversation versus, right? So I do think.
Told it's a great way to educate new board members.
I mean, you actually have a point of view because you understand everything that you're talking about versus try to connect the dots and read everything and make your own internal conversation. Or Beth Ann has to answer a gajillion questions because we weren't in the meeting to know what the heck you guys talked about. And to be honest, our summaries and blurbs we read out loud don't really mean much to people who need to have a conversation. And as one of those who asks a ton of questions, you can appreciate why it would just be easier to be in one conversation. I get it, change is going to happen, but I don't see this putting anybody in worse off than we are in isolation. Like, I just think it's, and also we're not done, right? Like, so this is saying, well, consider it again. I just want to make sure we have the process down so that we understand where this would go. Because we are already in tough budgetary times. To keep hoping that we can bring the community along with a really brief snippet and hopefully the right questions from all of us to help everybody catch up is really not fair to our community and to us who are trying to make the best decision for them and with them in mind, right? So I see that this group of folks and everybody new will just add value to that conversation, so why not?
I just want to clarify, I mean, I am not disagreeing with anything here tonight, I'm just suggesting that we wait until the new board is sworn in. Everybody for Woodland and Oakland and Collingswood, because we all reorganize and there are a lot of changes that happen, and lots of people could be incoming to see what's going on and learning about the process. So my suggestion is that we hold off until the new board is sworn in, but I'm not disagreeing with how it could be beneficial to all of us.
Isn't it better to learn from those who have experience? I'm just asking. I'm a newbie. I would not offer that we are the best served at making the tough decisions first, right? I'm just going to offer. It would be deeply unfair to say, hey, you're new. Trust me, there is a shift on this side of the table. Now decide if you want to understand how all this works. I think there's a lot of everybody here has a lot of experience, and so you have enough to guide the direction of this group in a really thoughtful way.
I'll chime in there really quickly and state that I think I would argue that we should all vote our conscience on this, right? Whether or not we believe it's the right move to make or not. Because if you think about it, if we were currently working in working sessions, that's what would happen next year, right? What is happening next year, the fact that there would be committees, if not for this policy, is simply because of the status quo, right? It's just because this is how we've done things. And so I would say that for all of us, we should vote what we believe is right, rather than say, just because we've done this before, we should continue to do it just like that.
And this is like the longest community of the whole that we've had, at least that I've had in here. And this is basically proof of concept, right? We're doing it right now. This is our kind of working session that we're already setting and doing. And as Zakaya said, this has been the most productive meeting that we've had in this discussion term, right? So I think putting in the work, as you said, this is putting in the work. Not voting into it right now and pushing this down the road, kicking the can down the road, is not putting down the work or putting in the work, and just kind of pushing it off and waiting for more time to see what happens.
I would like to point out that no person at this table has said that this was a bad idea. I think there's a little bit of disagreement on the timeline. I'm going to push back against the idea that because not everybody is right on board the moment, I believe, committee meetings happened last week, right? We got a very detailed email from Ms. Maya, the chairperson from Kelly, on Thursday, if I recall. So, 4 days, 5 days to digest the idea. This conversation's been very helpful. But I think the suggestion that, if not everybody is 100% on board with no questions, and suggesting that, maybe it's reasonable to have additional conversations. And, Jimmy, you're saying kicking the can down the road. That's not what we're advocating. I mean, to me, kicking the can down the road feels like, we'll deal with this maybe next year, Okay, let me clarify. Yes, next calendar year, but, next, further months from now. Not at all what I think some people are suggesting. I think it's reasonable to suggest maybe have further conversations, have some questions, and this conversation's been great. Beth Ann, you pointing out that the meetings for the year are presented at that January meeting, that's something to definitely take into consideration. I'm wondering if a retreat date for early January after the reorganization, is that a possibility? I think that's a fair question as well. But to suggest that not jumping right on board 100% to a pretty significant change is a suggestion that anybody who has questions is not committed to transparency, is not committed to campaign promises. I think that's a little extreme.
So what questions do you have?
And also, I'll also
I've been
mention,
saying
just
them.
in terms of the process, we would have a second reading in December, so a full month to discuss and debate and consider before we actually vote to pass. That is if this passes first reading now.
And can I recommend, like, I know there's questions going around, and I know I had a ton as the board secretary, and we've been here already like 2 hours. I get it. So I pummeled Roger with, I think, a dozen questions, and he was very kind getting back to me. This is just a first read, so we've got the month, but if you've got these questions, compile them and get them to Roger and I, because we can try to answer them. And then you can come back in December. That's when the vote would be, because like I had a lot of logistical questions. Like I think my first one was, you're gonna make me sit here for, I think I literally wrote this, 4 hours and come back next week and do it again for another 4? I'm like, no.
And I
Like,
apologize.
we need to like figure out how we need to streamline the process at the second meeting so we're not like burning everybody out. So I had some very personal logistical questions. And I'm sure everybody else does. So I would just suggest everybody kind of compile your questions, get them to Roger and I, so we can answer them and share them out. And then December is when you would actually vote. That's just my 2 cents.
Would that be maybe, what kind of, obviously if people are sending their questions, I know we don't know exactly, but, would it be like a detailed email? Like, these are all the questions that have been asked, here are the responses, maybe a week before the board meeting, maybe have some deadlines so that we can get our answers earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to share it, 2 weeks before if that's helpful for people's consideration timelines. One of the things that I think, when thinking through this proposal, I made sure to chat with other board and actually commission leaders who do this type of work. We have, I know Haddon Township does working session. Haddonfield commissioners do working session, right? And to answer the question I think Ms. Devine brought up of like, well, why can't we all be together in one room, is specifically because of the Open Public Meetings Act, right? And that's what the committee structure is made to circumvent, is that we can have private conversations because we are not within a quorum of board, therefore we have the committees. And in order for all of us to come together to discuss, it has to be a public meeting. And so, but I talked to those leaders from those 2 groups, and again, one of the things that was obvious was that there's actually a good amount of public bodies, governing bodies, that use this model, right? So it's not like we would be trailblazing in that manner. 2, the piece about trust. I have personally, racked my brain about, I can say as many times as possible, here are the data. This is what they say. And, within the same 5 minutes be told that I am untrustworthy and lying. And so I have personally racked my mind about how do we build trust in this board, especially considering the difficult decisions that will come about the questions of what do we want our district to be, understanding that it has to change. What do we decide as a community to focus on as a district? And this consistently came up as an answer for this is how we build trust. And I did get a chance to also talk to our board solicitor about this change. And on one end, it's not, it's a question of what people are comfortable with. But on the other hand, our lawyer mentioned, other boards that have changed from committees to the committee of the whole working session structure, they've done it because of that specific issue of trust. That's exactly why they did it. So again, those are kind of the final pieces there that I wanted to put in. And again, that today would be about first reading, and the actual voting to implement it would be in December, which would be the second reading. So it is actually 2 votes before such a thing could be implemented.
Is this also going to be discussed at policy committee? Like this
Well,
Is it the same flow? I'm just making sure.
It'll be on the agenda, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Given the number of public meetings that we had during the last budget cycle, where angels came down and saved us at the last minute, and people still had a significant amount of distrust because there were meetings going on outside of the public eye. I understand the concern about rushing into this, but I think not having it done in time for what is going to be most likely an even more contentious budget season than we had this past year is irresponsible. To use somebody else's words, again, we are responsible to our community regarding decisions being made, and as such, we believe in being open and transparent with our community members.
Okay, well, I guess with that, it doesn't seem like any other board members have any comments here. So with that, can I get a motion to close committee of the whole?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay. Moving on to section 5, future dates and miscellaneous information. Many dates here, including the holidays, and I will point out the last board roundtable for the calendar year is Thursday, December 18th. That's the date, so 6:30 p.m. at the Collingswood Library. We'd love to see more community members out there. And of course, I believe is the, oh, I don't actually see the SpongeBob on here. But remember, 11th, yeah, 11th through 13th. And again, caustheater. Is it .org or .com? .com with an ER. So, moving on to section 6, routine business. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the October 27, 2025 regular board meeting?
So moved.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Moving on to section 7, student reports. I will now turn the floor over to our student board members.
All right. So it's our second report. We kind of did the same thing as last time. We sent out a poll to all the grades just to follow up after the last one. Last time would have been the student body's first response to anything like this, anything where they get their voices. So now we're doing it again just to keep it moving. So as a general sense, we asked about Yonder. No surprise to the general response. On a scale of 1 to 10, we were well below a 4 on that. Over 130 responses and students are still against it, and the policy did actually just make a pretty big change this last week. It was brought to Mr. Williams' attention that over half the student body did not have a phone with them. That was, everyone was coming in the morning and signing, we don't have a phone. And it was found out, obviously, a lot of people had their phones and they were just hiding them. So that led to a policy change and searches being done, and that put more unhappiness into the students. But we recognize the board doesn't have very much control over student policy. That's just how they're doing with the phones. We did ask about school spirit. Just how people are doing, if people are happy, and it was okay. It was around average, like a 5, middle of the scale on how everyone's feeling. We had Powder Puff where the juniors won. We just did hallway decorating. We're in Spirit Week right now. Everything I think is going pretty well with all that. We are fall sports pep rally. Our Paul Print articles are the Paul Print newspaper is about to go out. Everything is moving as it should. I think everything's doing well. Everyone's feeling all right about the school. The spirits. It's not good. It's not bad. But we're working on it. And with the holidays coming up, it should be a lot brighter. Kenny, you had your sports report that you were going to do.
Oh yeah, so I just wanted to touch on the fall sports who had made it to the playoffs and kind of just give an update. where they were. So for the football team, the Collingswood football team finished with a final record of 5-5. But due to a so they clinched the playoffs at first, but due to a technicality and a couple of upsets during that week, they sadly missed the playoffs. The boys soccer team sadly lost in their first round of playoffs as well to Haddon Heights with a score of 2-3. Both of the goals being from senior Patrick Farrow, who is also attending the South Jersey All-Star game down in Clayton High School, which I believe started at 7 o'clock, so good luck to them. And the girls soccer team sadly lost as well in their opening round of playoffs with a final score of 4-0 to Sterling.
We also asked the students how they feel about the possible merger of both the high school campus and the middle school campus becoming a 6-12 building. And there's a lot of concern whether that's overall just a title or affects like their classes, everyday routine. And we believe that they should be given more information about that, as school spirit is one of our concerns and our overall job to get just like feedback about climate and culture.
We didn't want to hit too heavy on the idea of merging. We talked with Mr. Whalen about this. None of the students or the administration really knows what this means entirely. So it was a proposed question to the students because many of them had heard about it, and they don't know, like we don't know, so we didn't want to go too hard on it. One of the other things that we were going to bring up is possibly a policy addition for all students is an AI policy. Mr. Whalen told us that things were being discussed last year. ChatGPT is the main AI thing. Other things are coming up. It exists. Students are using it. Teachers are using it. It's here whether we like it or not. But there is no direct policy in place concerning AI or cheating with AI, because it's not quite the same as plagiarism. It's not quite the same as just cheating. It's a mix of the two all at once. And we have some classes giving out group punishments to the whole class for the actions of single students using AI. We have experienced group lectures, group discipline, group, points off and everything for the actions of one student using AI to cheat. And we feel as students that it shouldn't be a group punishment for the actions of one student, and then there should be a direct policy to refer to for all teachers, that they can't just come up with their own thing and decide that everyone gets to suffer for the actions of one. And we'd prefer if there was something that they could go off by the books in the student handbook concerning other forms of cheating and plagiarism. AI could fall right in there like that. Yeah, so that was one of our things. And then Kenny was going to go further on to some yonder instances with safety and fights and everything.
So one thing that has kind of come to my attention is that in recent weeks, some of the yonder pouches have been getting stolen with student phones in them. And I kind of just wanted to bring that to light, just because I don't, now me personally, I don't have much information about it. I've been hearing about it, and it's kind of come to concern with me, because it's like, if I'm putting my phone in, do I really feel safe with knowing that people are getting their phones stolen, from school, a place where their phones should be safe? And the whole reason we have these yonder pouches is that so then kids aren't on their phones. But if my phone is in a pouch and somebody steals my phone, then it's a tough situation it makes me kind of not want to put my phone in the yonder pouch, because then now I'm worried that my phone is going to get stolen. And these things are expensive. They're not cheap. It's like my phone, I have the iPhone 14. This is, I would say, around $1,000 to $1,200, and some with the newer phone models coming out, they're just getting increasingly more expensive, and it kind of raises concern, like, do students want to put their phones in a pouch in a place where their phones are potentially going to get stolen? So I just wanted to shed some light on that, kind of just bring that to attention to the board. And another thing I would like to touch on is some of the technical issues that are kind of going around throughout the high school. There's two key kind of things that I have witnessed myself. So the first I would just like to bring up is in Mr. Palucci's English classroom, 6 of the computers have been broken, and he's submitted tech tickets weeks ago and hasn't heard anything. There's no, like, the tech department hasn't reached out to him. There's been no computers that have been replaced. And one thing that kind of raises concern is that some students, because of there's a limited amount of Chromebooks in the classroom, some students are now left without computers. So if they're left without computers and we have assignments on those computers, then they have to sit and wait for another computer to open up for them to use. And sometimes the assignments may go over the time limit of the classroom, which will then cause some students to have to work on this work at home. But some students aren't fortunate enough to have computers at home to work on, which that will also kind of increase missing assignments, and some kids' grades might slip because of that. And another kind of big topic, because I am on Pause TV, the TV station that we have at the school. We have a number of technical issues that have been going on down there in the studio that I think not a lot of the students recognize, because even with these issues, we still run a really, I would say, professional show. Some of the TV1 students, which TV1 is like our basic, our introduction level class, so like the basics, you're learning the basics and kind of getting the ropes of things. They aren't able to create these accounts on Adobe Premiere Pro, and Adobe Premiere Pro is the application that we use to edit our videos. And we have 2 Pause TV members in the crowd with us, Raina Barr and Miles Fisher, who have both been nominated for student Emmys and have been in groups who have won various awards for these films that they're making. And some of the TV1 students aren't able to even create an account for Premiere Pro, which it is kind of disheartening, because then it's like they aren't able to use the techniques that Miss A teaches. And TV is a very hands-on, experience-based class, and without the use, they're kind of just, so what they're left to do is just record these videos and then just wait until they have help, wait until they are allowed to edit. And it hurts the TV program, because then it's like, once we graduate, then there's all these kids who haven't learned these techniques, and we're not here to help them. Like, I'm a teacher's assistant in one of the TV classes. Raina's a teacher's assistant in another class, and so is Miles. And another thing that hurts us is that because we are in the classroom with these TV students who are on the Macs, that we rely on the MacBooks, but our MacBooks don't have any internet connection. So it's hard for us to work on our own projects during those teaching assistant class periods, because we don't have access to the internet and we can't edit. And I kind of wanted to shed light on that, because it not only does it hurt individual students who are planning to go to college for this type of stuff, like Raina and Miles, who are both planning to attend colleges for TV and film, but it also hurts our base entry students who are kind of looking at this as a profession. So I wanted to bring that to light and kind of just ask for help on that, because the tech issues are a really big problem in the high school that I have noticed and that multiple of my peers have noticed.
That also goes with not only like individual students losing out on opportunities, but the program itself beginning to slip. Is like, I still have, 2 years ago I had plenty of seniors in some classes that have since lost funding, like with our construction classes, be able to teach me how to use all these things. And now the upcoming students do not have that knowledge or experience is, we don't want to see more programs begin to slip out of things go untouched, things go unfixed, and then it just moves into another instance of an empty classroom that has nothing to do in it. And like a prime example of this is our AP physics and honors physics classes that was mentioned at the last meeting. There's an empty classroom with all the materials in it, all the tools, collecting dust. We don't want to see any more programs slip, any more students miss out on all around opportunities. So that's the broad point of it for everyone. Any questions for us? Anything?
I was just going to say, I appreciate bringing up the AI issue. I'm an English teacher, see it all the time in my classroom. And I know that a number of districts are grappling with this. There's a number of grants that are funding research, and there's a number of collectives that have formed in South Jersey. I think Delsey has one, that are kind of teaming up on this to work on some sort of like blanket policy. There's a lot, like you said, it's not really cheating, it's not really plagiarism, and students use it in so many nuanced ways. Teachers use it all the time as well, so it is embedded in education, but appreciate hearing, there has to be some sort of like blanket way to address it, so thank you.
So, Chris, thank you. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Just a couple of pieces. And so in terms of the AI piece, we have had in our possession we have a service that helps us craft policies. So we've had one for about 6 to 9 months in our possession. We did not feel comfortable putting out a policy without having teachers and administrators and students at the table to help us vet said policy before we made a recommendation to the board. We're going to start engaging in that work in January. We need student and staff voice at the front of the policy development, and so that will be coming. So student council and student board reps, your leadership will be integral in that piece, so please stay tuned.
I just have a quick question, and you might not know, you might know. For the Adobe Primer Pro, is that what you called it? Do you think it's a licensing? Is that, maybe somebody else knows, is that you can't get an account because we don't have enough licenses?
We could get information
Okay,
back.
that's
Yeah,
just something I'm curious if it's.
No, similar question,
Yeah.
but not to make you guys have to answer that,
Yeah,
but if we could get that.
So everything that the student reps talked about,
Okay.
I just crafted a message that we will get an answer tomorrow.
I will jump in and mention that I wouldn't be surprised if it were a number of license issue. And I do wonder if there's a, I'm not going to try to get into someone's classroom, right? But my point is that those licenses are really expensive, and so that might be one of those things where there has to be some way to simply just to be able to, unfortunately, share licenses. I don't know, but that is, working in IT, yeah, those are really expensive. I'll also mention that the AI piece, I think, is really important, so thank you for bringing that up. And I think one of the things, I work at the University of Pennsylvania and at the Wharton School, and a big piece that they talk about there is what does AI mean for education, right? Like, as in, not just like, what does a computer mean for education, or what does, digital textbooks mean for education, but like, this fundamentally changes what education is, right? And I think I'm assuming that it's going to have to be multiple iterations of the policy, and I know that there are grants out there at the state level and at actually University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education and all that stuff. A lot of people are looking to put money into helping organizations figure out and like education figure out, and so hopefully at some point we'll fit into one of those grants so that we can get more support for that too, because I think it's definitely a huge question in the field of education. What does it even mean now to teach when you have stuff that can literally do your homework for you, right?
So we actually for education as a whole, and like Ms. Sherman, you were saying, coming from teachers who use it too. As an example, for the same class that we receive, that several classes, I believe it probably 5 or 6 classes received this this lecture on this AI without, policy in place to reference and the punishment that we received for it. We also receive, across several classes, but instances I do have from multiple students is students receiving grades generated by AI that do not follow a rubric, that everyone will have very similar, if not exactly the same responses from AI, with errors inside of it, typos from AI, words with random links in it from AI, and then receive almost seemingly random, fractions that correlate to grades that do not match up at all. We had some students with 3 out of 6s who received 90s, and then some students with 3 out of 6s who received 70s, and some with 5 out of 6s who received 80s. It, to us as a class and multiple classes across all grades, didn't make sense, and to hear AI is so bad for us all, we're wondering, like, as education, how should this be implemented in grading processes and in students using it as a learning technique or a study technique, or, and not using it for their homework, but using it to aid them, or should it stay out completely?
And I think something that you're speaking to, which I wish we had the funding to send literally all the students and all of our staff to an executive education course on what is generative AI, because at its core, you're talking about we need to understand what it actually does, right? And at a very basic level, it's about weighted probabilities, right? Very basic level, it's like when you see generative AI generate something for you, it's one word, then what's the most likely word to follow that word? Then what's the most likely word to follow that word, and so forth, right? And understanding what it does is I think one of the first steps to understanding how, as students, right, that we can't expect our students to never use generative AI. I think that'd be irresponsible. But understanding what it does so that you know how to use it. It's kind of like the Wikipedia of our era, right? Everyone says, don't use Wikipedia. Well, no, use Wikipedia, but that's as a first source, right? And so I think that's really, that feedback is amazing.
And to responsibly use it is, don't, just, right. If the students knew how to use this AI as a tool and not as a cheating thing, and even as if in some of our computer classes, or maybe as we have this flex period, is put a video up in our flex periods, is just give the general students just a quick, in that 20 minutes, here you go, here's something you can think about for the future for AI, and that's more on us going to administration, seeing if we can make that happen. But even just simple stuff like that to educate the students would be great for all of us.
Thank you very much. I want just one more thing really quickly. I do believe we have a policy on the books about if you are a student or you have a student that needs access to a Chromebook at home, that there is a procedure in place to be able to ask for that. So please, if you are or your student is sitting at home without a Chromebook and they're in need of that, please do reach out to the school or the district, because I do believe we have a procedure in place to make sure that all students who need one at home are able to take one home. Thank you very much for the student board reps for your report. It's pretty awesome to have student board reps.
Yeah, thank you guys.
So. As always, you are more than welcome to stay for the riveting second half of the board meeting, or you may go home. It's totally up to you, or you can stay for some of it or whatever. So thank you so much. Yeah. Turning to section number 8, the superintendent's report. Dr. Maddow.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you for hanging in there with us. I just want to reiterate again We are extremely proud and thankful for our theater program. Our students continue to wow and amaze us performance after performance. And so I just would encourage the community and those that are watching online, please go to callstheater.com and sign up for the December 11th, 12th, and 13th performances. You will not be disappointed. On November 18th, 41 high school students were inducted into the 2025 National Honor Society. The National Honor Society recognizes outstanding high school students who demonstrate excellence in scholarship, leadership, service, and character. Membership also encourages personal growth and active participation in the school and the community. We'd like to publicly thank Mrs. Muller as well as the high school faculty and staff who support our students. And specifically, congratulations to all of the inductees for this exceptional accomplishment. On November 14th, we sent out a community-wide district academic support plan. And so last month, the district presented the 24-25 district test report, and the presentation highlighted many areas where students continue to show strong academic growth and progress. The presentation also identified areas in need of improvement, specifically academic disparities that exist between various student groups. And so we released the academic support plan to provide families with additional insight into the ways that we are supporting student growth and achievement. And so we encourage you to look through those resources and reach out to your child's school if you have questions or concerns. December 9th through the 12th will be elementary report card conferences. And so our teachers and staff are excited to celebrate student progress through these conferences. Please refer to the 25-26 academic calendar for the early dismissal schedule for all pre-K through 5 students. And please follow up directly with your child's teacher in order to schedule your conference. The 2025 Madrigal performance schedule has been released. Performances begin on November 28th, starting with the Collingswood tree lighting, opening up that season, and then weekly leading all the way up into the 23rd. There are multiple opportunities to hear a wonderful performance from our Madrigals students. 2026 All South Jersey Chorus. Congratulations goes out to the following Collingswood vocalists for their acceptance into the chorus: Raina Bradshaw, Amelia Brill, Owen Garvey, Leo Rosado, Brady Mikulski, and Andrea Ospina. We're extremely proud of the talent that continues to be shown by our students throughout our district. As was referenced earlier this evening, we as a school district, as well as a system of schools, we're committed to continually improving the school climate to ensure a safe, supportive, and positive learning environment for all students. We have been collecting the data, and so once the data collection is complete, our MTSS teams will present the findings at the December board meeting. And so we would just like to thank our entire community for supporting our efforts to strengthen our schools. We are also pleased to announce that our newest preschool location, Calls at Parkview, is open, has been serving and supporting students. There are still a few seats available for residents with children ages 3 or 4, and we are ecstatic to have students within that building and joining our new Collingswood preschool family. During this season of gratitude, we are also very fortunate to have students that are committed to service. And so this month, the Collingswood High School Interact Club partnered with the Rotary Club to fill 50 bags of food to be distributed to local food banks. And so we would just like to publicly thank our club advisors as well as all the student volunteers who make this important work possible. Our Buildings and Grounds team are participating in their holiday food drive. They have been collecting donations beginning in November 3rd through December 2nd. And so non-perishable food items will go directly to Collingswood, Oakland, and Woodland families during the holiday, with deliveries taking place on Saturday, December 20th. And we would also, we would be remiss in not recognizing at the back our Panther Pantry. The mission of our school district's food pantry is to provide individual students and families in our 3 communities with supplemental support. Ms. Neesner, she's in the back. She has been leading this tremendous effort. This is an effort that they do throughout the entire years, beginning in September all the way through June. And so in addition to having bins at each and every school, we also do collections at every board meeting. We are looking forward to continuing with that work, especially in this season of gratitude. When we look at section 8.01 is our enrollment report. October of 2024, enrollment was 2221. October of 2025, it is 2212. That board report is attached. 8.02, 03, and 04 are the school safety, suspension, and anti-bullying report, and those are also attached. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McDowell. Moving on to section 9, our first section of public comment. The purpose for this public comment section is to discuss items listed on the agenda. Additional, more general comments may be made later in the meeting. The public is reminded that attempts to resolve all concerns and complaints should first go through appropriate staff members and administrators. The intent of public comment is to give the community opportunity to provide feedback to the board. We will be actively listening and taking notes so that we can take all that is being said into consideration. We will also take note of any questions and, if appropriate, do our best to address them at the end of public comments. Members of the public are welcome to speak and expected to do so with the utmost sensitivity for everyone in attendance. In fairness to all who wish to speak, there's a strict 3-minute time limit per person during public comment, and Ms. Coleman will assist by keeping time. Please remember to state your name and your address for the record before you start speaking, and the floor is open.
Hello, my name is Miles Fisher. I am a senior at Collingswood High School. I am here speaking on behalf of the Pause TV program. I have been with the program since I was a freshman. I am now currently the senior supervising editor, and I'm planning on attending college for film. I want to bring to your attention 2 technical problems we're having at the TV studio, like Kenny mentioned, for the past 3 months. Currently, all 40 of our TV1 students, that's our entry-level TV students, do not have access to Adobe Creative Cloud Services, which provides our editing software, Premiere Pro. That means that they cannot work on any projects. The first-year TV students, who should be learning the fundamentals of basic video editing to become the next generation of Pause TV student producers, have lost 3 valuable months of what could have been lessons in editing. Adobe Creative Cloud and its software, including Premiere Pro, is a core part of the TV production curriculum and an industry standard software. I am confident that I could graduate and get a job editing right out of high school. In addition, 3 of our computer editing iMacs and 3 of our MacBook laptops do not have internet access. It has been a struggle to use these devices necessary for our education. I'm asking for help. It is almost December, and many of our Pause TV seniors are trying to prepare our video portfolios for college applications, and we need your help with getting the software and internet connection needed to create successful students. I want to clarify that I'm not criticizing anyone. I am asking for your help in resolving these issues so that the Pause TV program can continue to thrive and make an impact on our community. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Raina Barr, and I'm like the president of the club and the senior supervising producer. So over the course of my time in the TV program, I have produced numerous of videos, including a short documentary I received an Emmy nomination for, and I won an Emmy, my commercial, for my junior year last year. This year, creating videos has become significantly more challenging for all levels in the TV program. Our TV1 students are unable to create accounts for Adobe Premiere Pro, preventing them from applying the skills taught in Ms. Armino's curriculum. The TV program is not a lecture-based course. It relies on hands-on learning and active creation. As a senior, I am enrolled in both independent study and a teaching assistant with Ms. Armano. Because I am the same classroom as TV1s, I also rely on the iMacs and MacBooks in the studio, which have no internet access. This forces me to use my personal phone hotspot. Additionally, the computers do not have Premiere Pro installed, making it extremely difficult to complete my work efficiently. We have reached out to the IT department repeatedly since August, but little progress has been made. Despite these challenges, we continue to produce our videos and broadcast our live morning news, and we have maintained professionalism throughout, meaning like most people are unaware of the obstacles we face. We are asking for your help to restore our program to the high level it reached my freshman year. Your assistance will make a meaningful difference for all students in the program. Thank you.
Hi. Before I state my name, can we talk about what happened during committee of the whole during this public comment, or do we need to wait till the second public comment?
You're on the agenda, yeah.
Okay, great. My name's Leah Foreman. I live at 501 South Vineyard Boulevard, and I would like to first, Zakiya, thank you for speaking up. I think you gave, that was very kind of you, the grace that you gave everyone, and I want to ask what the next steps are for the board now that you've been made aware of the photo and what happened. I think that, you know, while there may have not been the intent to cause harm, the impact was there. And I think that that has not been acknowledged or recognized by the people or leaders in that photo. And I think that that is a first step. That said, I'm a white woman standing up here advocating for people who I don't look like. So maybe that's not what they want. And maybe the next step is asking the Black students, the Black leaders, the Black community what they need now. And I would encourage the board to think about what the next steps are and how they are going to address this, because it was, as a parent of children of color, it was upsetting to see that in a celebratory way, whether or not that was the intent. Thank you very much.
Hi, can I raise this? Oh. I was gonna see if our AV experts could help me out. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That's great, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, can you all hear me? Okay. How we doing, folks? Can you hear me? Okay. I am Rebecca Finkel. I live at 916 Park Ave. And I also want to talk about the photo because it affects me as a Jewish person. For the purpose of this comment, I will give the benefit of the doubt to everyone involved and trust that none of them were familiar with a hate sign that has been in use by the far right since the first Trump administration, because that's a problem in itself. When I wrote to the board to express my concern, a member who was in the photo replied, "I think it's quite a dangerous situation when neighbors start assuming and making assumptions about a quick snapshot in time." I'm gonna edit myself for time. If you have ever had a conversation with anyone in the photo, it would be very clear that this was not a hate symbol. I don't know most of the people in that photo. I wasn't born and raised in Collingswood. I grew up in a Jewish family with people who were alive during the Holocaust and who would be unsurprised but horrified by the recent rise in Nazism. The Tree of Life massacre, if we all remember that, happened one state away. Kids in my family have never gone to synagogue without seeing an armed guard, so that is where I am coming from and what I know. Later in the email, the board member added, "I do not have the time to be up with the times on all the new age tan motions that you are referring to, as I am too busy volunteering for my community." I disagree with the idea that board members should not be judged by their public behavior and that they shouldn't be expected to be familiar with contemporary hate signs. We shouldn't be expected to have personal relationships with our elected representatives to have our concerns addressed respectfully. Rather, the onus is on you to get to know the people you serve. If we want to talk about dangerous situations, we can talk to the students who were terrorized by the White Student Union last year, or the ones who are worried about having their health care or family members taken away. Have conversations with the people who are aware of New Age hate signs because they have to be. Collingswood taxpayers have spent about $8,000 in legal fees because a white board member, in an effort to protect someone close to her, declared herself a better judge of racism than our black superintendent. Yet she was somehow unable to identify a common sign for white power. Your job is to protect students, not your friends and family, and to understand how racism, anti-Semitism, and other forms of bigotry are expressed in 2025. If you don't have the time, make the time. I think that one thing we can safely assume from the photo, which shows a large group of white women, is that this is not a diverse political coalition, but it does represent a wide range of people with influence over our diverse student body. I would like to ask the 5 board members pictured in the photo to take some basic steps to address this, including a public acknowledgement of the impact of the photo, self-education and training on hate speech and symbols, and facilitation of district-wide activities so that we can all learn from this episode. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eric Fieldman. I am a teacher here in Collingswood. Thank you. Not that tall. That's okay. No, you're not. Keep talking. Okay. 16-year educator here. There's been obviously a lot of to unpack here today, but I do want to address one thing. It was brought up before about one of the reasons why so many students have been leaving or not coming to Collingswood. And as an educator, all the reasons that were mentioned before are valid, but one of the big reasons I hear from my students is the lack of electives, a diversity of courses. There's been so many things cut. Some of them have been addressed today. Certainly computer technology was one. I've heard from 3 students in the last couple of weeks in my classes about not having cooking classes anymore. These people want real life skills, and this goes across from AP to my special education students. And all of this, I believe, along with cutting of staff, has made Collingswood less attractive. We don't have the staff, we don't have the technology, we don't have the class offerings. And much of this is because of how our money is spent, which gets to something that we talked about a few weeks ago when district administration had a meeting with staff here in the secondary buildings about the future of the school over the coming year. We were told that we can't deal with hypotheticals. We didn't exactly have numbers of what was going to happen. The only thing we knew for sure was staff is going to be cut. At that time, I asked a question, has any consideration been made about if we are going to cut staff, starting at the top? And again, this is not personal to anybody, but cutting administrative levels, people who do not offer direct educational services to the students on a daily basis, save those salaries that would save teachers and staff members who actually offer direct services to education to our students. My question was not answered. It was ignored as if I was invisible. I was looked at and then moved on to the next question, which I personally, for me and all our staff and our community, I find a little disrespectful, and I would like an answer to that, to that question. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mr. Goldberg, music teacher at the Tatum and Garfield Elementary Schools. I am here today speaking on behalf of the district music teachers, Ms. Carlson, Mr. Gross, Mr. Hartung, Ms. Intricasso, Ms. Ludwig, and myself. It is the mission of the Collingswood Public School District's music department to provide every Collingswood student the opportunity to grow through a high-quality, ability-appropriate, universally accessible music program that inspires the continuing study of music. Coming up in December, 'tis the season for music. Look forward to the high school band at Collingswood Manor, the middle and high school winter concerts, Zane North's, Sharp's, and Tatum's winter concerts, and a wealth of madrigal performances. Madrigals can be found singing at the Woodland Tree Lighting, madrigals at the Faculty Breakfast, madrigals on Haddon Avenue, madrigals at Cathedral Kitchen, madrigals at Tatum's Winter Market, and madrigals at all 5 elementary schools. Madrigals, madrigals, madrigals. In the theater world, also courtesy of your district's music team, don't miss the Collingswood Middle School production of SpongeBob SquarePants, the musical. Grades K to 2 will be taking a walking field trip to preview this absorbent and yellow and porous event. For more details on any of these exciting events, please feel free to reach out to your school music teacher. In this week of gratitude, I'd like to take a few moments to acknowledge my colleagues on the music team who not only look out for their own students in class every day, but they also go to great lengths to support the entire music program from K to 12, including all that they do for me personally. From staying hours after school to help me reset a cello sound post, which also happened to involve retrieving the sound post setting tool, which I dropped in the cello, to coordinating district-wide events, to joining the instrument demonstration and giving me a wonderfully massive string lesson enrollment this year, to sharing their time, resources, and space, I owe my fellow Collingswood music teachers a debt of gratitude that I can never repay. Ms. Carlson, Mr. Gross, Mr. Hartung, Ms. Introcaso, Ms. Ludwig, I would not be who I am today or be able to do what I do without all of you. Thank you.
Okay, seeing as there are no more public comments, I believe there were two questions that were asked. The first one was about what are the next steps for the board related to our discussion about our core values, is how I'm going to interpret that. And I think, frankly, I don't have an answer. I don't know if the board has an answer yet at the moment, but I think that's part of what our committee of whole and I think our push has been is for us to be able to have next steps for, how do we live our core values as a board. There was another question brought up about whether or not cuts to administrative staff would be considered in the upcoming school year. Something I want to mention, which is, is that I think there's been this conception that we have disparate parts of the district, like there's admin, and then there's student-facing positions, and then there's non-student-facing positions. And the thing about any school district is every single person at school district should be working towards the benefit of students. Just because our overnight janitor never sees a student, hopefully, doesn't mean that they are not supporting our students. One of the things from the board roundtable that we heard from Dr. Walker and Ms. Howell Turner about the amount of support that they are focused on in terms of providing teachers at the ground level data support. How do we understand what students need, individual students need? Those type of supports from administrators are what can help us address individual needs of students instead of asking all of our, we'll say, frontline staff from having to do everything. I think what is being set up here is that we were going to have very difficult conversations in the spring because budget, if you look across anywhere in New Jersey, is the thing. School funding budget is the thing. As a district, we are constantly one of the most efficient districts in terms of administrative cost. We have some of the lowest administrative costs per pupil across all school districts in New Jersey. All right, so I want to mention that too. I think I'm also, I think this board probably also is experiencing a little bit of whiplash, right? Considering that in the previous board meeting, we heard explicitly pleas to not cut administrative staff. And here we are now hearing pleas to cut administrative staff. And I don't know that trying to distinguish those levels is any help for our district or our students, but understanding how can we, with the budget that we're going to be faced with in the spring, do the best that we can for all of our students. And again, I don't know that that's an answer that we can give about what's going to happen in the spring, because that's work that I think the administration is working on right now very deeply. But it's one of those, again, back to what we talked about in terms of committee of whole, why I think these discussions are really important, because I think there are a lot of, I think, very understandable apprehensions and very understandable questions about how do we move forward. And so I think that really highlights that point there.
Could I please ask a clarifying question for something that's come up a couple times tonight? The Premier, oh, they're not here anymore. The Premier, oh, sorry, Kenny, thank you. The Premier Pro account, is that something that you were able to access last year? So that's something that the PAWS program has had in the past?
Yes, it has. So as far as I've been in the program since freshman year. I was in digital photography, and we used Premiere Pro then. So for all 4 years that I have been a part of the program, it has been accessible.
Okay, so you've had it in the past, but this year you have not been able to access. So Roger, you said something about licensure. Like, do we know why they don't have it, or
I think,
we're just
and I
not sure
think
yet?
that's we have to find out.
Okay, thank you.
Can we really quickly just get in the weeds on that for just like half a second? Because 3 months and 40 users not being able to access the program is unacceptable completely. Like that's, and then multiple tickets being put out to the tech team and not getting responded, also unacceptable.
Yeah, and so I think that we need to, like, as a board, we will follow up to understand. I think, you know, Mr. McMillan, you, as I do, work in IT, and I think there are a lot of reasons for a lot of things, and so I think what we need to do is get the full picture to understand, and hopefully we can address the needs. All right? Thank you. Okay, moving on to Section 10, Business Administrator Board Secretary Report. Ms. Coleman?
All right, item 10.01 is your October monthly budget transfer report. Item 10.02 are your financial statements for the month of October. 10.03 is your student activity financial report. 10.04 is your food service financial report. 10.05 is a listing of the purchase orders that were that were issued during the month of November. 10.06 is a listing of the warrants that will be paid tomorrow morning, pending approval this evening. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Moving on to Section 11, the Buildings, Grounds, and Finance Committee. Mr. Craig, Chairperson, will present.
Thank you. The Finance, Buildings, and Grounds Committee reviews all financial statements, purchase orders, and warrants on a monthly basis. Committee also reviews and approves all contracts with outside service providers and oversees all maintenance and capital improvement projects district-wide. We're seeking approval of the following items tonight. Item 11.3 to 11.10 is the Board Secretary's report, as it's just been presented. 11.11 is a settlement agreement between the board and a Collingswood student. 11.12 is a shared service agreement for services providing residency investigations. 11.13 is membership in the Burlington County Scholastic Athletic League. 11.14 is approval of Sarah's Spanish program to meet Department of Education required elementary language mandate. 11.15 is disposal of a Sprinter van from the fixed asset list so that we can try to sell and see if we can get some money back for something that is not being used. And then items 11.16 and 17 are both use of facility requests related to basketball. So we are seeking approval of items 11.3 to 11.17 tonight. I think on the agenda it says 11.2 to 17, but 2 is just a list of the board members. So, thanks.
So I guess seeking approval for items 11.03 through 11.17. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Are there questions or comments from board members?
Question about this Spanish school, so going virtual. Just quick question about if we find someone in the interim, would we hire that person, or are we just kind of looking at September for those positions?
Yeah, when we get to the curriculum instructions, I have a kind of more comprehensive, if that's okay, to just pause for 1 second, but yes, I'll come to that in like 2 minutes. Yep.
Okay, roll call, please. Ms. Coleman.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. Devine?
Yes.
Mrs. Maya? Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Z? Mr. McMillan?
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus?
Yes, except we're required to abstain.
Mr. Chu?
Yes. Moving on to Section 12, Curriculum Committee. Ms. Sherman, Chairperson, will present.
The Curriculum Committee oversees and approves the district curriculum and assessment programs, as well as field trips, home instruction, co-curricular programs, and school calendar. Seeking approval for the following items. First, 12.03, I'm going to pass over to Ms. Howell Turner with the curriculum update to address some of those questions.
Thank you for the question, Maggie, and thanks for the opportunity, Sarah. So first and foremost, I just want to wish Ms. Singer well in her next opportunity. I know that her students and her colleagues are going to miss her. Ms. Singer was our ASL teacher who's transitioning into a new opportunity. So as I have shared before, elementary world language, or world language in general, has been a historically hard to fill role here in Collingswood, and I think in many other districts across the area. And so the plan that you have before you to consider tonight is not a best case scenario, I'll be honest, but we are mandated to deliver elementary world language instruction. We have had and still have postings open for elementary world language Spanish preferred, elementary world language ASL to continue the existing program, and a long-term substitute posting. Any of those three could serve our needs in the short term or the long term. We have had 0 qualified candidates, unfortunately, but not shockingly, for the ASL or Spanish preferred position currently. It's also a tricky time of year, so I think we can acknowledge that there's a few things happening, but also just the pipeline of world language teachers is not robust. And so we have an in the meantime plan. The positions will remain posted and open. And tonight for your approval is a program called Sarah's Spanish School. It is one of several options that we considered as an interim bridge to a future great world language teacher that we hope to hire, a real human world language teacher in the future. It's been used by 29 other districts across the state of New Jersey, either currently or recently. And based on our research and contacts in other districts who use the program, it seems that it will serve our needs now. It is a virtual program, but appears to be pretty highly engaging from a student learning perspective. We will be hiring, so that's item 11.14, which you just saw. Coming up in the personnel section, 13.08, is the request to approve a long-term substitute to facilitate that program. And so that approval, 13.08, is either until the last day of school or until we hire, or if we hire someone before, which I think was your question, Maggie. And so, yes, that is our plan to conclude this school year, should we need to. And we are entering the more typical hiring season, and so we will be explicitly putting our feelers out to our networks for a great world language candidate. Realistically, I think we're talking about September of 2026.
Okay, moving on. Items 12.04 and 12.05, 12.06. Elementary, middle school, and high school field trips. Many are holiday-oriented, including singing downtown, things of that nature. 12.07 are out-of-district home instruction placements, all medical. There's 4. 12.08 is the updated revision to what was approved actually last month for the dual credit program for high school students to earn college credit while in high school through Camden County College. And 12.09 is the annual plan to project and plan for the enrollment seats for pre-K for the next year. Allows for us to begin budgeting and staffing at this point. So seeking approval for items 12.04 to 12.09.
Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Questions or comments from board members? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. Devine?
Yes.
Mrs. Maya?
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman? Yes. Mrs. Z? Mr. McMillan?
Yes, but withholding from where I'm required to abstain.
Mr. Dulkis?
Yes, except we're required to abstain.
Mr. Chu?
Yes. Moving on to Section 13 Personnel Committee, Dr. Seltzer, Chairperson, will present.
The Personnel Committee reviews all recommendations for teaching and staff employment, considers co-curricular employment, and considers all professional development opportunities for staff members. Seeking approval for the following items. 13.03 is a resignation. We wish Mr. Camps well. 13.04 to 13.07 are leaves. 13.08 is the item Ms. Howell Turner just talked about, long-term sub to facilitate the use of Sarah's Spanish. 13.09 is a contract for a secondary math teacher. 13.10 is a recommendation to transfer a executive administrative assistant to replace the wonderful Ms. Jenka. 13.11 is non-athletic stipends, EDP stipends. 13.12 is high school athletic EDP stipends. 13.13 are middle school athletic EDP stipends. 13.14 is the approval of someone doing her LDTC practicum through the end of the year. 13.15 is moving on a recommendation for a CEA Level 4 grievance. 13.16 is the approval of substitutes and tutors, and 13.17 is our travel expense form. So I'm seeking approval of items 13.03 to 13.17.
Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second? The questions or comments from board members? I'll just clarify, because I know there was a question earlier for 13.15, which is the CA Level 4 grievance. The way in which that is written is that board members would vote yes if they believe the board should reject the grievance, and no if they believe the board should not reject, essentially accept the grievance. Okay, so if you believe the board should reject the grievance, then you would vote yes. I know it's reverse. No if you believe that the board should accept the grievance. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Ms. Coleman, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Sorry. And just a warning for the wait, never mind. Sorry. I got it wrong. My bad.
Okay. Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. Devine?
Yes.
I love it. Mrs. Maya?
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman? Yes. Mrs. Z? Mr. McMillan?
Yes, except for where required to abstain.
Mr. Dilkis?
Yes, except we're required to abstain.
Mr. Chu?
Yes. Apologies for that for folks at home. I got confused with another issue. It's been several hours. Moving on to Section 14, Culture, Climate, and Policy Committee. Ms. Maya, the chairperson, will present.
Policy and Regulations Committee reviews all updates and changes of district policy and regulations. On the policy up for our first read tonight is Bylaw 0155, Committee of the Whole policy that we discussed earlier. And then 1404, Section 1404 is policy second reading. 2422, statutory curricular requirements. 5117, interdistrict public school choice. 5339.01 is student summer protection. We went over all of those last month as well. And then 1405 is a regulation that's up for a first reading, which is 5117, the regulation of interdistrict public school choice. So tonight we are looking for an approval for, I think, 1403 to 1405.
Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second? Questions or comments from board members?
So I just want to, again, reiterate that I think we should table or not have the vote tonight on the first read for the Committee of the Whole. I also want to point out that, and we talk about spending our money, we had mentioned that we're going to need an attorney for the first couple of sessions. When we do that, that's also going to be an expense. In addition to us having to send you all of our questions about how that's going to go is not necessarily the most transparent way to go. I think it should be a big board discussion with everybody that's going to be involved in the conversation. And the other piece of that I want to mention is that we are going to need our tech crew here again for another night, and that could be something that is also going to cost us more money.
So, I think a couple things there. One is so it sounds as if you are not for the idea of doing committee of the whole.
I am for tabling that discussion until a later date for everybody.
Gotcha. Would you like to make a motion to table agenda item 14.03?
No, I don't think it'll pass, but it's okay. We'll
Okay.
just vote on it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from board members? All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mrs. Devine,
Yes.
Mrs. Maya,
Yes, with the exception of 1403, I vote no.
Mrs. Mikulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman, Mrs. Z, Mr. McMillan,
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus.
Yes.
Mr. Chu.
Yes. Moving on to section 15 miscellaneous. 15.01 is the HEAR report from the previous month. 15.02 is the 2025-26 nursing services plan. 15.03 are job descriptions that are revised. So seeking approval of agenda items 15.01 through 15.03. Can I have a motion, please? And a second?
Second.
Questions or comments from board members? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mrs. Devine,
Yes.
Mrs. Maya,
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman,
Yes.
Mrs. Z, Mr. McMillan,
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus.
Yes.
Mr. Chu.
Yes. Moving on to section 16, the second section for public participation. I don't believe there's anyone new in this room now, so I'll just state that this is general, more public comments, so in fairness to all who wish to speak, there's a strict 3-minute time limit per person during public comment, and Ms. Coleman will assist by keeping time. Please remember to state your name and address for the record. The floor is open.
Hi, my name is Tom Howard. I live at 16 Fraser Avenue. I wasn't here earlier, so I kind of missed like the earlier board stuff, so that's why I didn't speak in the first public comment. But I just want to speak to, I guess it was talked about in the first part of the board meeting, what people have alluded to as the infamous photo situation. And I stand here as, obviously, as a white male, and I can't say I can understand people who go through racism and anti-Semitism, and those things are super serious. But I'm also a little concerned that people can be publicly accused or implicated in expressing the most vile kind of hatred simply because they're caught kind of awkwardly motioning in a photo, and instead of going to those people and having conversations, real genuine conversations, instead of immediately contacting the media and others, that really is concerning, and I'd like to give anybody who's concerned with that the benefit of the doubt, because I can't obviously understand the feelings that people go through. But it's worrying because those things, they can ruin people's lives, they can ruin people's professions. The mere allegation, whether founded or unfounded, can just totally destroy someone. So to bring that kind of stuff up without having genuine conversations, I think is kind of misinformed or disingenuous at best, and can be malicious at worst. And given the fact that some of the loudest voices who I've seen expressing anger, and hopefully genuine anger at this, have also said some pretty horrible things in the past, like in the referendum last year, accusing people of racism if they simply opposed it, it makes me wonder if this is motivated by something else. And I don't know everybody in this photo, but I do know a good friend of mine on the board who I've known for almost 30 years, one of the most caring, compassionate people who has dedicated her life to public service in this community, would never, ever, ever choose to associate with anybody who would express vile expressions of hatred. And I know the board has to always consider every voice that's out there, and you have to listen to every complaint, every letter, every comment, and that's great because you should, because all voices should be heard. But you should also decide which voices should be taken as serious, which voices should not be taken serious, and you should consider that, before things rise to a huge to-do, to actually have genuine conversations and think about the intentions behind some of these allegations. Thank you so much.
Okay, seeing as there are no more public comments, we are moving on to section 17, adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Nay? All right. Thank you.